Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the Luffy fanfics, back with amazing fanfiction. This is the movie of What If Luffy and Robin time travel with real powers. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Luffy. The horrified and despairing scream tore from Robin's throat and silenced the battlefield as all eyes turned towards where the archaeologist was standing with her captain and husband. After a nice lobby and water 7, the two of them couldn't deny how attracted they were to each other anymore and dated for nearly a month as they sailed back to Alabasta to help Vivi with a rebellion problem. When Robin had been nearly killed by a rebel with a sea stone blade attacking while she was busy saving a little boy, Luffy had gone berserk. He had kicked the ass of every member of the rebellion single-handedly and unlocked something called Haki in the process. As he nearly killed the one who stabbed Robin, Robin woke up to Luffy cradling her and holding her protectively, begging her to wake up, and Robin had made it dry. Half-hearted remark about how he was acting like a worried husband. For the first time ever, the rest of the crew saw stoic, near unshakable Nico Robin jaw drop and blush brightly when Luffy proposed to her right then and there. He had kept a ring with a diamond on it he had found in one of the sunken ships, and he had on the happiest smile any of them had ever seen when she had regained her wits enough to kiss him with a murmured, "Of course, my dear captain." The two had been married right there in Alabasta by the king himself, with the whole kingdom cheering for them as they said their vows and placed simple but sturdy golden bands on each other's fingers. Of course, the rest of the crew avoided the ship a week as the newlyweds celebrated their honeymoon before they went towards the next island. When they were attacked by Kuma, the couple had just gotten shocking news but had managed to hold on to each other as they rocketed towards Amazon Lily. Despite knowing full well that he was married, somehow Luffy managed to get Hancock to fall in love with him despite him only having eyes for Robin. "Luffy, don't do this. You promised. You swore you'd never let me be alone again," Robin begged her husband, who had taken a Haki and sea stone-infused blade across his stomach from one Marine Vice Admiral that had been aiming for Robin. To his credit, Luffy had managed to stay standing and fighting enough to knock away everyone within 3 yards of him and his wife. "You won't be alone. There's still the others and our gift," Luffy said, finally collapsing as Robin caught him and gently sank to the icy surface, tears flowing down her cheeks without end as she held him close. The man was smiling as he took off his beloved straw hat and placed it upon her head. Luffy. Ace, who had been separated as he went to save a crewmate, and Garp both screamed as they dashed to the rubber man's side. They weren't the only ones either, as Iva, Jinbei, Boa and several others came rushing over as well, even some Marines like Kobe, Smoker and Hina. "Grandpa Ace, now I'd like for you both to meet someone who is more important to me than anything," Luffy said, smiling weakly up at his brother and grandfather who kneeled in the ice next to him with tears in their eyes. "This is Robin. She's my wife and I love her more than anything. More than adventure, more than freedom, more than even my dream," Luffy said, causing everyone who knew the boy to gasp and stare wide-eyed as he smiled up at Robin, whose tears doubled. "She is my everything and I am happy dying to protect her, especially now when she has precious cargo," Luffy said, smiling slightly wider no matter how pained it made him as he gazed up at her with utter adoration and love in his eyes. "I know this is asking a lot, but can you all please grant me one last request?" Luffy asked, looking up at them as they felt tears burn their eyes, although Smoker would never admit it. "What is it, Straw Hat-kun?" "Hina promises to do her utmost best to grant your request," Hina said, stepping forward just a bit as she felt a tear roll down her cheek. She had tried repeatedly to sink his ship and his crew, and yet seeing him like this now, it didn't feel real. It couldn't be real. "I'm gonna be a dad, but I won't be there. Can you guys please help Robin and our baby? I don't want them to wonder if they should have been born because of their blood. No one deserves that, and I don't want the baby going through that," Luffy requested, despite how labored his breathing was as his gaze lowered from Robin's face to her stomach. Everyone there froze for a moment and felt their hearts shatter. Luffy was dying in the arms of his pregnant wife and yet was more worried about the unborn baby than the fact that he was dying. "Robin, I don't want you thinking this is your fault. It's not. I am your husband and your captain, so I am supposed to protect you more than Nami protects her goal," Luffy said, making Robin choke out a sobbing laugh. "And you little one, Daddy is sorry that he couldn't be there, but Daddy loves you and Mommy so much," Luffy near whispered to his wife's stomach, speaking to the baby inside as if it could hear him. "Everyone's sorry, but I'm D." Luffy never finished the sentence, falling limp right near the end with a smile on his face. No, Luffy, please. Wake up, Robin begged as she broke down into sobs, begging him to just wake up. Everyone bowed their heads in respect or grief as several of them began to cry. "The son of dragon is finally dead, but now we have to eradicate his spawn before it can taint the world," Akainu said, smirking as he strode over arrogantly. The other two admirals bowing their heads in respect for the fallen captain and not moving from where they had been. "You'll have to go through me, brat," Garp snared, standing protectively in front of his daughter-in-law, who froze at the man's words as she gently laid Luffy on the cold hard ice while the others formed a protective ring around her. Oh, don't be ridiculous. The son of dragon should have never been allowed to live, much less produce another hellspawn in the Emerk. The vice admiral that was speaking was cut off by a black arm sprouting from his back and grasping his throat. Armament hacky. Smoker looked surprised as he and the rest turned to look at Robin, who was trembling as she stood up, her head bowed and eyes shadowed by the straw hat her husband had been famous for. First you take my husband from me, soon after we learn about the baby on the way. Robin began, her voice low and dangerous as she lifted her head to show murderous, completely black eyes that had twin rivers of tears flowing down as she glared hatefully at the vice admiral that had spoken. And now you want to kill my baby too? The only thing I have left of my husband, just because of one man that my husband never even knew of until recently. Robin asked, her voice laced with venom as she kept her hands over her stomach protectively, not in her usual pose for her powers. It's a devil child, oh snap. The Marine captain that had been speaking fell to the ground dead of a broken neck due to an arm on his chest snapping. No, you seem to forget Luffy might be the son of dragon, but here Robin's head snapped up as she roared. Black arms sprouting from all surfaces and strangling or snapping the necks of all those not surrounding her protectively. Pirate or Marine, she didn't care. Nothing mattered anymore except the baby within her stomach. A wave of conquerors hacky and an impossible amount of flower petals obscuring everything was the last thing anyone saw as Robin's fruit awakened and bloomed. The age-old question of how the world end was finally answered, but it wasn't by fire or ice. I am the devil's child, and this world will burn in the hell that is my home. Ultimate Hana technique. Wilting world. No, the world ended in the grief-fueled rage of a wife and mother to be with the aid of flower petals. Ugh, I'm alive, Luffy asked more than said as he came to and sat up, looking around confused at the completely black space he was in. Next to him, looking to be sound asleep, was his beloved wife, who began stirring as soon as Luffy moved. Go back to sleep, Luffy, Luffy. Robin snapped awake after her brain processed who was right beside her. In an instant she was up and staring at her husband in shocked disbelief and yet also happiness. What? But how? Robin asked, staring at him. He didn't even look like he had been injured. He looked just as he had while they were infiltrating Impel Down. I don't know, but are you all right? Luffy quickly discarded any concern over his own health as his eyes checked the older woman over for injuries, his hand coming to rest protectively over her stomach. I'm fine, dear. The last thing I remember is some Marines saying that our baby shouldn't be allowed to be born, Robin said, her hands clenching into fists, as her and Luffy both unleashed waves of conquerors hacky at the thought of someone hurting their baby. I lost it. I don't remember anything other than screaming that the baby isn't the devil's child, that I am, and then using my devil fruit. Robin was confused about that part. Her devil fruit was considered a vanilla type like Luffy's. Not very dangerous, and yet she had done something. He destroyed the world. A new voice stated as a figure appeared near them with a grin, causing Luffy to stand protectively in front of Robin, who was on alert as well. I ain't here to hurt ya. The man who both Luffy and Robin recognized with a start as Gall D. Roger said, holding his hands up to show that he meant no harm. What do you mean I destroyed the world? My devil fruit is the bloom fruit, Robin said, looking confused even though she remained on high alert. Simple, your fruit was given the wrong name. True, it lets you bloom body parts anywhere nearby, however that's not all it does. It allows you to bloom just about anything you can think of as long as you know how it works and how it's supposed to look, Roger explained, making Robin frown confused. So it's a mystery power, Luffy said, making Roger and Robin both look at him before Roger laughed. Actually, you're not wrong. No one knows the full extent of the devil fruit. You could bloom a sword made from solid stone just by touching a rock. You could bloom gold from the ground. You could make flowers bloom by touching them. The possibilities and limitations are endless and unknown, Roger said, causing Robin and Luffy to look at each other. We're never telling Nami about this, they said in complete harmony, making Roger snort slightly. Your navigator. She reminds me of Shaki, only stingier, Roger said, grinning and making the two look at him before he got back on topic. But anyways, your power isn't just blooming things. Flowers grow, bloom, and then they. Roger trailed off, expecting them to answer. Wilt, Robin said softly, making him snap and point at her. Bingo. Your devil fruit should really be called something more like the life cycle fruit. It gives you the ability to grow things incredibly quickly or slowly, stopping growth completely even, allows you to bloom things as you already know, and gives you the power to make things wilt and die, even people, Roger explained, making Robin and Luffy stare in disbelief. But since it was never known that the fruit's wielders could do something like that, well, it was classed as a low-tier power. Many think it's useless when really it's one of the most dangerous devil fruits in the world. Or well, it was and will be again, Roger said, smirking a bit. See, little lady, what you did when you lost control was access not only your conqueror's hacky but also your strongest and deadliest technique with the fruit. Wilting world. You destroyed the entire world when they killed your husband and threatened your baby. Honestly, I don't blame you. Despite him hating the fact that I'm his father, I've been watching over Ace and I love him. I kept his existence a secret from all but Garp because I knew Garp wouldn't care that I'm his father. I would have done pretty much the same thing you had if this had happened concerning him. Destroy the world to keep him safe, Roger said solemnly, a look that didn't really fit his face as he stared at Robin. If I had heard someone plotting to kill the baby, I would have gone completely nuts. Luffy agreed as he smiled at his wife. See, but since the cycle is still continuing, you actually managed to bloom another time stream. Everything in it is the exact same, or close to it, to your world, except in this one ... You two wouldn't have gotten together unless something drastic happened. Now gather around, kiddies, and let Uncle Roger tell you how things are going to happen, Roger said, returning to his wide grin that actually made him look a lot like Luffy. The couple looked shocked and horrified at the thought of not being together. They loved each other too much. Here's how things are gonna go. You two will be bloomed into this time stream a year before Rubber Boy here starts his journey as a pirate. Nothing will happen to your memories or current skills, and nothing will happen to the baby either. Your body will automatically stop the child's growth as soon as you're in the new world. When you meet up with each other again, you both can pretty much do whatever you want. Marry each other again, resume the growth of the baby, have a happy family as you adventure around, or you could keep the growth of the child paused until you think you're ready. Keep things exactly the same as it was in your world, minus your death and whole destroying the world thing, of course, or you can have more fun by screwing everything up and switching it around. Up to you, Roger said, shrugging at the end while Luffy and Robin looked at each other and then looked at the river that was behind Roger. Obviously it was the time stream. We're getting married again ... and definitely having this baby as soon as we're ready for it, Luffy said, earning a smile and nod from Robin, who leaned against him a bit, one hand over her stomach. Agreed. How shall we meet up? At Whiskey Peak or earlier? I know you were at the Barady to recruit Sanji since I was having lunch there when you showed up, Robin asked, looking at her husband, who grinned at her and rubbed his nose against hers. How about at the Barady? I don't want to spend any more time than necessary away from you, Luffy asked, making Robin smile and kiss his cheek. Barady it is. I'll be sure to send you a letter or a call on the snail every chance I get before then ... and make sure that I train on the growing and wilting part of my powers, Robin said, making Luffy grin. And I'll train anything I can. Gramps is supposed to show up on the island about 10 months before I leave for my journey, so I can probably get him to train me in this hacky thing and with some other techniques that can help us. Maybe I'll learn how to use a dagger or something too. That way any threats to you and the baby are taken care of permanently, Luffy said, his smile turning twisted and dark at the thought of any threats to his wife and child. And I'll keep my assassin skills sharp as well, Robin agreed, loving the look of darkness and protectiveness on her husband's face. He may have tried not to kill if he could help it ... but he wasn't taking any chances with her and the baby. Spoken like true parents, ready to kill anyone or anything to protect your daughter, Roger said, snickering and feeling a tiny shiver of fear at the looks on their faces. It was dark and twisted and made even him scared of messing with the two before their eyes widened. Daughter? Robin asked, wide-eyed, not knowing what gender her child would be until it was time to give birth, making the news now a surprise. A pleasant one at least. Hey there, princess. Daddy's going to spoil you rotten, and don't worry, he won't let any nasty little boys get near you, Luffy said, grinning as he kneeled down and spoke to Robin's belly. Roger laughed loudly at that while Robin looked at her husband fondly amused. Honestly, dear, at least wait until I'm far enough along for the child to hear you, Robin said, amused at her husband's actions while he just grinned at her unrepentantly. Well, you two better go now before you miss your chance. Have fun and try to keep me entertained, yeah. This whole being dead and watching over the world things gets kinda boring really without some chaos and entertainment, Roger said, waving them towards the river and making Luffy grin. Robin gave a small giggle while Roger bursted out into loud laughter at Luffy's next comment. Will do, and don't worry. This time you get to watch as I become the king of pirates, Robin becomes the queen, and my baby girl becomes the pirate princess. It had been 2 months since Luffy and Robin went to the past in this new world, and they exchanged letters at least once a month since Robin was still with Baroque Works at the moment. Luffy had spent a whole month in the forest alone testing out his cool new hacky ability and some other tricks he could do with his devil fruit. Of course, the Luffy and Robin of this world were replaced by the married couple, leaving Luffy with several new scars and Robin using all of her acting ability to mask the softness in her eyes that had appeared after a while on the Straw Hat crew. Datton nearly had a heart attack when one of her newer bandits, some guy named Gal from another island, sneered and told Luffy that being made of rubber was useless, and Luffy proved him wrong by stealing the guy's gun and shooting himself in the head with a grin on his face. Of course, that also exposed some of his new scars to the woman and brushed them off as nothing major. Even the slash mark over his stomach and the burnt X over those scars, and then beat the shit out of Gal, quite literally mind you, for calling Luffy useless. The woman might be a bandit and act like she didn't care around the boy himself, but everyone knew that Luffy was her brat, just like Ace's and like Sabo was. Even Makino admitted that she was more of a Nisan to Luffy while Datton was his Kasan, or foster mother really, but same thing. To Luffy, she was the only Kasen he knew, and that was all that mattered. Right now, Luffy was in a fight against 10 men pirates, apparently with small bounties, and was kicking all their asses on his own easily. This hadn't happened in his world, but he didn't care. These punks weren't all that powerful. Even Daden or Buggy could take them out with ease. Daden, her bandits, Makino. The mayor, pretty much the whole town was watching with either dropped jaws or laughing as Luffy beat them up with his hands in his pockets. Heck, the only reason why the bandits hadn't taken out this group was cause Luffy called dibs on them being his warm-up exercise. Oops, put a bit too much power in that one, Luffy said, wincing when a kick to one poor swordsman's head splattered the guy's brain matter on the ground. The civilians and other pirates looked shocked or horrified. The bandits were hooting, and Daden was yelling at her brat to pay more attention to the guy behind him than the corpse. Luffy, Garp roared as the marine ship approached, and he jumped off. He paused when he saw Luffy in the fight, if it could be called that anymore, and winning effortlessly. Oh Gigi, just give me a second. Almost done with my warm-up, Luffy said, grinning at his grandpa happily, while the marines behind the man looked shocked and sick in a few cases. There were already 3 dead bodies. One guy with his head turned to mush, one with his chest caved in, and the other had been kicked clean in half. Sword 3 o'clock. Daden yelled a warning, but it wasn't needed. Luffy already sensed him coming and had kicked the guy into the side of the marine ship halfway through his mom's warning. Okay, 4 dead bodies. That guy busted his head open and left a blood smear on the side of the ship. Man, you guys are so weak. I've faced ducks tougher than this, Luffy complained as he took out the second to last person with a casual non-haki covered foot to the leg, which shattered the guy's leg bone in 3 places. You little brat, you're dead. I'm gonna kill you first, then that old harlot of a band, the captain of the pirates, began threatening angrily, only to freeze when Luffy glared at him dangerously. Daden may be a bandit, but she's my Kasan, and no one threatens or insults her, Luffy growled as he took one fist out of his pocket and advanced on the trembling pirate. Daden had began standing at the pirate's insult, but froze at the look on Luffy's face and sat back down with a small smile hidden behind a same bottle at hearing Luffy call her his Kasan. That brat. Gum here. Garp's eyes widened as Luffy's hand turned to shiny steel like black bullet. Luffy snarled as he slammed his fist into the pirate's ribcage and hit him with enough force to blast his heart, lungs, spine, and ribs clear out of his back in a very messy and brutal spray of blood and bones. That had been one of Robin's darker suggestions on an attack, for those that they wanted dead, like say the Vice Admiral that had killed Luffy in the other world. Most of the civilians fainted or threw up at the action. A few Marines threw up or passed out. Garp was gaping in shock and disbelief while the bandits were hooting and cheering for the blood and gore. That messy their brat, Daden said with a snort as Luffy casually wiped the blood off of his knuckles with the shirt of one of the knocked-out pirates. Of the original 10 pirates, 4 of them had died due to Luffy using too much force by accident. 5 of them were simply knocked unconscious once Luffy reeled in his monstrous strength. The captain of the pirates, well, that wasn't an accidental death. No, Luffy did that on purpose. No one threatens or insults you, Daden Ka, Luffy said, grinning at the bandit as he bounced over to land on her lap and steal a swallow of her sake. He was a pirate, and his crew had parties for every occasion possible, and sometimes just because he could hold his liquor well. Not that they knew that. Boy, get off of me, and you aren't old enough to drink this yet, Daden said, trying to toss the grinning teen off of her and making him pout a bit as he latched onto her. Iwahaha, you're going to be a strong marine, Luffy, Garp said, laughing and making a note to talk to his grandson later about the use of haki. Luffy looked up from where he had latched onto Daden's back like a koala and tilted his head. Why would I want to be a marine? Those guys are really weak. See, they can't even handle looking at a dead body, and I bet they couldn't beat a single tiger, Luffy said, pointing at the marines behind Garp who looked sick or were trying to rouse their fainted comrades. Garp turned and growled at the marines. You brats are an embarrassment. How do you expect to be a marine without seeing dead bodies? Garp ranted as he chased the wimps back up onto the boat. Well, how about you come to HQ with me and meet some strong marines then? That'll show you how much better a marine is than a pirate, Garp said, turning back to Luffy, who looked surprised. This wasn't part of his plan to get training, but he could make it work. Can we have meat and do lots of training? I'll be stronger than any marine, Luffy asked, making Daden look at him weirdly for agreeing to this. He never seemed interested before. Iwahaha, of course we can. That's my grandson, striving to be the best and finally seeing that marines are stronger. Garp only paid attention to part of that while grabbing Luffy, who was hugging Daden goodbye, much to the woman's fake hatred of the affection. Luffy was shocked at Garp's next words as the old man carried his grandson up onto the boat before he could change his mind. He had to send this information to Robin as soon as he could. Let's go, Luffy. We'll go meet your Ba-chan for a while and get started on training. Suru will be happy to see you again. She hasn't seen you since you were a baby. Robin was staring at the letter that the carrier pigeon had just given her, rereading it for the 4th time since she got it. It had been 11 months since they traveled to the new time stream, and that meant that in another month Luffy would be starting his journey. She was on her turtle riding towards the meeting place with Crocodile and reading his letter while pretending not to notice Vivi following her. My dear Flower. Hey Flower. Miss you so much right now, and if I weren't surrounded by Marines I'd borrow a den mushy and call you up. I miss your beautiful voice so much, my Flower. These guys all want to hear the voice my beautiful girlfriend that I always talk about. Can't help it that I'm the luckiest bastard in the world for having you in my life. But I didn't want to have to kill them for making pervy remarks about you, so yeah. We're still on to meet at the restaurant in about 2 months, right? I hope so. I can't wait to see you again. This last near year without seeing you has been hell. And that's not even counting the training Gigi and Ba-chan have put me through. Oh yeah, speaking of Ba-chan, I can't tell if I just did something stupid or incredibly smart. See, she has been giving me lessons about the most wanted criminals and you came up. I put in an argument about how in the world it was possible for an 8-year-old child with what they classify a non-destructive low-tier devil fruit to take out 10 marine battleships on her own and then escape without a scratch. Then I tossed out the rumors and some facts about the corrupt marines around at the moment. While now Ba-chan plans on sailing around with me for a while. We'll be classified as concerned citizens while she's with us BTW to investigate these rumors and probably meet you, since I can't stop talking about the most amazing woman in the world. So yeah, that happened, but hey, I got much stronger and smarter. I can even read and do basic navigation now. Oh, did I tell you that when I use my rubber powers with my haki I catch on fire? It's awesome, and I'm naming one attack Red Hawk cause it was inspired by Ace and it sounds awesome. I'll show you when we get attacked after meeting up. Can you imagine Arlong's face if I completely trashed him with a flaming fist? Love you, my Flower, and see you soon. Forever, your rubbery idiot. Luffy, only you, goofball. Robin finally breathed out as she smiled slightly at the letter, only idly noticing as she reached her destination. Truly only Luffy could pull something like this off. What is that, Miss All Sunday? Crocodile asked as he noticed Robin approaching with a small smile that was quickly wiped off of her face as she folded the letter carefully and placed it in a hidden pocket of her uniform. Nothing important, just a letter from a contact. Robin lied easily as she resisted the urge to snap the man's neck where he stood. She had been discreetly training her armament and observation haki, and with her powers and the element of surprise on her side, she could kill him in seconds. The only reason she hadn't yet was so that her beloved husband could save Alabasta again, where they would get married again. And because he had helped her and Luffy when they went to save Ace. Anything of note? Crocodile asked, staring at her coldly. It seems a Marine Vice Admiral plans on being in the East Blue for some time for unknown reasons. They couldn't get much more information without being caught. Robin told the half-truth as easily as she breathed. Lying, killing, stealing ... They all came easily to the woman who had to learn them or die since she was 8. HMPH. Not very important, but let me know if you get more information. Crocodile ordered, making Robin give a small nod of understanding. Shall I head to East Blue to scout out the situation? If a Vice Admiral is heading to the weakest sea. Robin trailed off, letting his mind bring up the implications. Then something big must be going on. Fine, head there to check it out and find out what you can about these rumors of someone having discovered my identity as well. This might be connected somehow. Crocodile ordered, making Robin give a small smile as she turned to walk away. I should be back in about 2 or 3 months. I'll send in anything important that I find out by mail, since a den mushy would be out of place in that sea. Robin called back over her shoulder as she began heading back towards her turtle. TCH, whatever. Remember what position you're in, Nico. Robin, Crocodile said to the woman's back, making her stop. Not turning to face him as her smile grew a bit wider. I know what position I am in very well, Crocodile, Robin said, turning her head just enough to look at him out of the corner of one eye. Crocodile scowled at her. She looked amused. Damn it. I don't see what you find so funny about this, Crocodile said, growling a bit, while Robin just looked more amused at his tough guy act. He thought that being a Loja made him so big and bad. Throw water on him and he was just another man. And Robin specialized in killing men like him without ever being caught. I just find it amusing that you think I don't know my position. I know where I stand very well, Robin said before climbing on board her turtle and turning to ride away. She waited until she was miles away from him before her smile turned into a vicious smirk as she held her hand over her stomach. 5 levels above you at the least, and able to kill you should you try anything against me, my husband, or my daughter. Robin finally spoke to herself as she set her way towards the Easy Blue and the restaurant where she'd meet up with her husband. She couldn't wait to meet up with him again and watch him beat the crap out of Crocodile. And that's if my overprotective husband doesn't beat you to it first, Sandman. HMPH. I can see what you mean about the corrupt Marines. Brats forget what the Marines stand for, Suru said, relaxing as her grandson, unnecessarily, helped her up to the floating restaurant. This was after Luffy had completely thrashed Fullbody for attempting to blow them out of the water despite Suru being on board and there being no flag in sight. For the last 2 months Luffy had been sailing with his grandmother to gather Zoro and Usopp and showed her the corruption of the Marines in the East Sea, as well as how badly the Marines screwed up Kuro's death. Right now the old woman was ticked at how far the Marines had fallen, and writing down everything that happened for reports to Sengoku and Garp. Of course Luffy and his crew couldn't be called pirates while traveling with her, so now there were a bunch of people praising the concerned citizens under the command of Straw Hat Luffy. Shahey, these aren't even the worst rumors I've heard of either, Ba-chan. Luffy laughed as he led the way into the restaurant, his crew and grandmother close behind with Nami coming in last. She was only a temporary crew member until they could defeat Arlong for her again, and Luffy couldn't wait. That'd be his first fight after meeting up with Robin in this world, and he wanted to show her that Red Hawk trick he came up with. Hello, how may I help you? The waiter at the front asked, looking at the crew while nearby Fullbody broke into a cold sweat at the sight of the Vice Admiral amongst the group he just tried to blow out of the water. I'm here to meet with someone, Luffy said, causing the others to look at his back confused before Tsuru smirked. Finally going to introduce me to your girlfriend, Brat? Tsuru asked, making Luffy blush a bit but laugh and nod. I see you're having fun with your grandmother, dear. A woman spoke from nearby, causing everyone to look up as Nico Robin, wearing her Baroque works outfit, walked over to them calmly from where she had been sitting in a booth near the door. Devil's child Nico. Tsuru began, her eyes narrowing at the sight of the woman, recognizing her from her bounty poster but being cut off quickly. Robin, it's so good to see you. You won't believe how much I've missed you, Luffy said, cutting off his grandmother with a wide beaming grin as he dashed forward and picked Robin up with a hug and spinning her around. Luffy, I've missed you too, but put me down. If you keep spinning me around, I'm going to get sick, Robin said, laughing a bit and making Luffy set her down and fret a bit. Robin quickly quieted his fretting with a chaste kiss on the lips. Brat, your girlfriend is Nico Devil's child Robin? Tsuru asked sharply, making those who kept up with the wanted posters nearby to gasp or look shocked. Yep, Robin, this is my grandmother. Tsuru, Ba-chan, this is my girlfriend Robin, Luffy said, doing introductions before remembering that Robin wouldn't know of the crew had she not been from the other world, and they didn't know her at all thanks to not being from the other timeline. The others are Nami, she's the one with orange hair, Zoro, he's the green-headed one with the swords, and Usopp, he has the long nose and slingshot. The other two are some swordsman bounty hunters Zoro knows named Johnny and Yasaku. Everyone, this is Robin. She's the most precious person in the world to me, Luffy said, grinning widely as he said that, making Robin blush a bit while some of the women nearby cooed at the romantic thing to say. Dear, you do remember that I have a bounty on my head, don't you? Robin asked, looking at Johnny and Yasaku with her body relaxed, but she was ready to use her power if she had to. Don't worry, they won't attack you, and if they try it, I'll kick their asses, Luffy said with an unconcerned grin, although when he looked at the two bounty hunters his eyes were cold and hard. The message was clear: if they attacked Robin, he'd kill them. They might not, but for a wanted person as dangerous as her to appear in full view of a Marine lieutenant and vice admiral is foolhardy. I ought to have my men put a bullet in her head right now, Fullbody threatened from where he was sitting with his date. You can try, but I'll just take the bullet for her and they don't work on me, Luffy said, unconcerned as his grin widened to near maniacal proportions. A bullet works on everyone equally, Kaya Marine nearby said, rolling his eyes at the arrogance while Luffy took the opportunity to steal the man's gun. Looking around, Luffy grinned widely as he saw all attention on him and held the gun to his head, much to everyone's alarm. You know I hate it when you do something like this, Robin said, sighing at her husband's antics and stubbornly looking away. She knew he was immune to normal bullets, which was all that anyone in the East Blue used, but seeing the man she loved more than anything in the world pointing a gun to his own head with a grin on his face, not fun and not good for her sanity. Sorry, Robin, Luffy said, pulling the trigger and causing everyone to gasp or scream when the bullet hit his head at point-blank range ... and then was bounced right back into the gun, destroying it. I swear you take another year off of my life each time I see you do that, Brat, Tsuru said as she tried to calm her racing heart, while Robin was obviously of the same opinion. Sorry, Ba-chan, Luffy said, his tone genuine, although he didn't look sorry in the least. He was grinning too widely as a few people fainted and more stared at him in disbelief and shock. How can you do that? One woman asked, wide-eyed and pale at what he had done, while Luffy grinned even wider, showing his famous D-grin as it was called. I ate the gum-gum fruit. I'm a rubber man, Luffy said, grabbing his cheeks and stretching them farther than any normal person could. Robin sighed in fondness as she looked around and saw quite a few of the still conscious women blushing slightly at what he had said. Oh, she knew about his powers and all of their uses quite well. She was pretty sure his gum-gum powers were partially responsible for her getting pregnant so soon after they had been married back in the other time stream. Foo-foo-foo-foo. Careful, dear. You go around telling other women something like that might make them try and take you from me ... and I don't share, Robin said, her eyes cold and hard as she glared down the other women in the restaurant, even Nami, who had blushed as well. Oh, I'm sure I can take him from you, one woman said with a particularly smug and lecherous smile on her face, until Robin turned to glare solely at her and crossed her arms with a dark smile on her face. Whoa, easy there, Robin. You know I'm loyal to you and love only you. No need to snap her neck, Luffy said hurriedly, stopping his wife, who had already grown 2 extra hands out of the woman's body and gripped her throat. Sorry dear, old habits die hard, Robin said, dismissing the phantom arms and relaxing as Luffy wrapped his arm around her waist. No wonder you have a bounty if snapping necks is a habit, Zoro said, looking at the woman surprised and making her snort rather inelegantly. I got that bounty when I was 8 years old for surviving a massacre of my home island. I didn't even learn I could snap necks with my powers until I was 12, and some men thought that they could try and rape me, Robin said snidely and making Tsuru frown. So Luffy was right. Robin had been forced into being a criminal. This was definitely something that needed to be brought up at the next meeting. There's something I don't get. If pirates massacred your whole island, then why do you want to be one? Nami asked, looking at Robin as they sat eating with the boys. Robin smiling fondly as she fed Luffy, who was laying across the booth with his head in her lap and being careful not to accidentally bite her fingers. You seem to have misunderstood something I said earlier, Navigator-san. Pirates didn't destroy my island or everyone on it. The Marines did, Robin said, her eyes darkening in anger. They destroyed her island, her friend Saul, the archaeologists, her family, and then they tried to take her husband and child from her too. Was it any wonder she seemed to hate most Marines? What? Why would they do that? Usopp asked, sounding scared and shocked as he looked at the woman whose face darkened a bit more. You're talking about O'Hara, aren't you? The island of archaeologists. And the infamous criminal Nico Olivia? Tsuru asked from where she had been watching her grandson and Robin interact curiously and with narrowed eyes. My mother wasn't a criminal. She survived a marine attack on a boat full of archaeologists, and they wanted to kill her to silence her. Even if she hadn't been on the island at the time of the Buster Call, it was entirely likely that they would have hunted her down even more than they have me, simply because we can read the old ruins that the government is so afraid of, Robin said sharply, her dark gaze shooting up to the old woman who stared her down without fear. So wait, how did you manage to escape a Buster Call? Zoro asked, confused and knowing full well what a Buster Call was because he had seen Marines threaten other islands with it. My only friend on the island, not an archaeologist, was a giant by the name of Jaguar D. Sol. He was a former Marine that defected after he found out the ship he attacked wasn't pirates but archaeologists. He ended up on my island where he stayed hidden from most everyone except for me because I would come and bring him food or read with him. When the Buster Call happened, he had sacrificed his life to buy me time to escape. Those 10 Marine battleships they say I sunk. He did that after putting me on a raft he had been building to try and get to Marine HQ to stop the call. Robin began, her eyes shadowed until Luffy poked her gently in the stomach, sitting up straight and wrapping her in a comforting hug. He did that whenever she woke up from one of her nightmares of the event or someone got her started on it. The gentle poke to her stomach both got her attention and reminded her of the baby. Stress and anger weren't good for an unborn baby. And then he'd wrap her in a hug to remind her that he was there for her. He'd protect her. He put me on the raft that wasn't big enough for him yet, but more than big enough for me. Yelled for me to live and find the friends I was born to have. When the Marines started firing on me, he took down the battleships. Then he held off a vice admiral long enough for me to escape onto the sea and away from the island as it burned, Robin said, sounding slightly calmer from within Luffy's embrace as he pulled her towards him and let her rest her head on his shoulder while he kept his arms around her and rubbed gentle circles on her stomach to help calm her down. They put that bounty on my head to silence me about the truth of O'Hara and the poneglyphs that the archaeologists from there knew how to read. You grow up quick when the world over is hunting you down. I can lie, steal, and kill without batting an eye, and none of it would bother me anymore, Robin said, smirking darkly while Tsuru frowned sadly. The girl would have made an amazing Marine, and yet simply because of the government's fear of the ancient ruins she had grown up on the run without a family or home. Honestly, how anyone thinks an 8-year-old girl with a low-class non-destructive devil fruit can take out 10 Marine battleships... It's a good thing stupidity isn't a crime, Robin said dryly and making Luffy snicker while Tsuru looked slightly amused. She knew what was coming. She had said something similar once in her youth to her 2 friends, her family, her older brother Sengoku and her husband Garp. Why's that? Nami asked, looking shaken by what she had heard. Because then there'd be a hell of a population drop, Robin said, making Luffy laugh a bit while Zoro snorted in amusement. This coming from the woman dating one of the dumbest men I know, Nami said, sweat dropping and earning a fierce glare from Robin while Luffy didn't look bothered. Luffy isn't stupid, he just doesn't see the need to make things complex. If he's hungry, he'll say he's hungry. If he wants to go on an adventure, he'll go on an adventure. He likes being simple, but that doesn't mean he's stupid, Robin said, her voice a bit of a growl. She hated how everyone thought that her Luffy was an idiot just because he preferred to be childish and rather simple regarding pretty much everything. Just like his grandfather, everyone thinks he is just another brainless brute, when in reality he's smarter than most would believe and just prefers to live a simple life, Tsuru said, nodding in agreement with Robin and feeling her respect and liking of the girl go up a few notches. The girl, for that's all she really was to Tsuru, was able to see past the mask of idiocy as Sengoku labeled it in their youth to the hidden depths of Luffy ... and loved him even when he acted wild and childish. Luffy hummed a question as something piqued the interest of his haki. Robin and Tsuru noted it as well and looked up just in time for Don Craig to arrive begging for food for his men. Hey, if they feed you and you try to attack them, I'm going to kick your ass. Luffy called a warning to the man who looked at him shocked and surprised. Language Luffy. Tsuru chided lightly although she was amused at the threat to the feared pirate. Luffy just shot a cheeky grin at his grandmother who snorted at his remark which confused a lot of people. Mixed between English and Japanese Ba-chan. I warned the idiots that I'd kick their ass. I'll be right back, dear. Luffy said, nuzzling Robin's cheek as he stood up to deal with the Craig pirates that had just begun trying to attack the restaurant. We just reunited after a year apart and you think I'm going to let you out of my sight just because of these weaklings? Robin questioned with a raised eyebrow as she stood as well, making Luffy pause before laughing as the couple walked out of the restaurant to deal with the pirates and left Tsuru looking curious alongside Luffy's crew. They wanted to know just what Luffy's girl could do. Shishishi, I was trying to give them some mercy, dear. They didn't even last a week on the Grand Line. You've been living there for years now, Luffy said, grinning at his wife while the pirates nearest them froze in horror and shock. The tall, beautiful, and unassuming woman lived for years on the sea that destroyed them in a week. You and your big heart, Robin said, smiling softly as she kissed Luffy's cheek. Lived for years on the Grand Line, huh? Then capture that woman, Krieg ordered, pointing at Robin and causing Luffy's grin to fall in a heartbeat. No one touches Robin, Luffy snarled as he stood in front of his wife protectively, glaring down the enemy pirates and not using his haki just yet. We're going to do a lot more than touch her once we get to the Grand Line. Krieg began sneering as he thought of how he and his men would use the woman. Robin merely sighed slightly and looked at the pirates as if they were stupid. Honestly, this isn't the first time something like that's been threatened to her and yet none succeeded. But seriously, they threatened her like that in front of Luffy. It was going to go easy on you. Then you just had to threaten me. So much for mercy, Robin said, sighing, and not being bothered when Luffy used a very controlled and directed blast of haki to knock out every single Krieg pirate except for the man himself. Don Krieg was shaking heavily and was on his knees panting for air as Luffy stared him down, not having moved a muscle. Tsuru face-palmed while Zoro, Nami, and Usopp gaped alongside the eyewitnesses. What did he do? Sanji asked, his cigarette dropping in shock. The boy hadn't moved a bit and yet all the pirates were knocked out. No one threatens my Robin, Luffy said, glaring darkly at Krieg as he strode forward, his steps slow and measured. The only reason I left you awake is so that I could kick your ass myself for what you threatened to do to my fiancé, Luffy said, barely covering his slip of the tongue while everyone stared wide-eyed at him, Robin included. Sure, they had planned to get married earlier than they had before, but for him to propose like this, that was unexpected. Tsuru raised an eyebrow. Her grandson only ever referred to Robin as his girlfriend before, so why suddenly changing it? And she had noticed that he had began saying something else. Suddenly Tsuru's eyes widened and her lips queried upwards a bit. She'd be damned if that boy wasn't just like his grandfather in some ways. Gum gum. Luffy's arm stretched several feet back and turned pitch black before becoming ... red. Red Hawk, Luffy intoned as his fist and arm caught on fire, before slamming it into Krieg and sending the idiot sailing through the sea. My Robin, Luffy said possessively as he appeared beside Robin and wrapped her up in a hug, holding her close and glaring at everyone and warning as if to warn them away from his beloved wife. Oh, I don't recall you asking me for my hand, Luffy, Robin teased, hiding her surprise while Luffy blinked for a moment before grinning and reaching a hand into his pocket. I found this when Gigi took me to the Grand Line and we found a sinking ship. I immediately thought of you and asked him if I could keep it, Luffy said, pulling out a small ring from the pocket. Not getting on one knee as was tradition and instead just holding her close as he presented the ring to her. Robin gasped and looked close to tears. Most thought it was because she didn't expect the boy to actually propose ... The real reason was because this was the same ring from the other world. The first time Luffy proposed, it was a white gold band with a simple blue diamond set into the ring so that it couldn't be knocked off or out. The white reminded her of her mother's hair, and the blue, Luffy said that it had matched her eyes perfectly, but she thought it matched the sea. Depending on the lighting it showed different shades, much like the sea did depending on clouds. She thought it fitting for a pirate, and was moved to near tears when Luffy grinned at her and loudly proclaimed that it was what he meant. Her eyes matched the sea, and the ring matched her eyes. He might be simple-minded, but ... he was incredibly romantic when he wanted to be ... and he always wanted to be romantic to her. Proposing after brutally beating down people who threatened me. How romantic, Robin said, her smile and tone teasing despite the happy tears in her eyes before she grabbed him by the vest and pulled him into a deep kiss. Leave it to the violent brat to find a sadistic wife, Tsuru said, snorting in amusement. Honestly, what was with the monkey family? Garp had her. Luffy has Robin, and the less said about Dragon's wife the better. Silly Ba-chan. Robin's not a sadist. She just has a morbid sense of humor, Luffy said after Robin pulled away for air. The older woman grinning much like Luffy normally did as he slid the ring onto her finger. Perfect fit just like last time. But I can enjoy watching, and sometimes participating in, a good fight ... or just enjoy watching someone get their ass kicked, Robin admitted with a shrug while her grin never went down one jot. Let's try and grab some popcorn then. Zoro will probably get his ass kicked in the next little while, Luffy suggested, making everyone turn towards him while Tsuru felt a familiar presence nearby. Why do you say that? Johnny asked, looking confused and making Luffy grin. Well, he's the strongest swordsman in the East Blue, but the East Blue is considered the weakest sea. He also wants to fight Mihawk, who is right there about to cut up the Craig ship. Robin enjoyed watching the fight with Sanji, who flirted with her once before running scared from Luffy's possessive glare, quickly serving her some popcorn. Even if she did notice Nami stealing the ship sometime, as Zoro was pledging to never lose again. So this is Arlong Park, huh? Not very impressive, Robin said, looking and sounding bored as she stared at the building with cold hard eyes. The Nami in her time at least, had once told her about how she had betrayed the crew back when it had just started forming because she worked for Arlong to buy her village back. She thought it would make Robin feel better that she wasn't the only one who was a former enemy. It'll make a nice bonfire while we roast marshmallows, Luffy said, smirking a bit, which looked a little more dangerous without his hat there, although he looked most dangerous when his hate covered his eyes and he gave an evil grin. I'm almost jealous, Luffy. You let her wear your hat, Robin said, teasing a bit as the two of them, followed closely by Zoro and Sanji and even Usopp, made their way to the gates that were being guarded by Johnny and Yasaku so that the villagers couldn't get in. Tsuru followed the group, scowling at how badly corrupted the Marines here are. She was going to wrangle someone for letting this all go under their noses. Who the hell was in charge of East Blue, and what the hell were they doing? Yeah, but I didn't give her an engagement ring. I'll let you wear my hat after I kick Arlong's ass. It looks cute on you, Luffy said, making Robin smile a bit. She did not blush. That had been the first thing to go when her mother went on that ship all those years ago. She had nothing to blush over because of her so-called family and the rest of the islanders aside from the archaeologist. Charmer, Robin said teasingly as the two of them stood in front of the gates and Luffy. Only for you, my queen. Luffy grinned as he reared his foot back and kicked the gate, walking in with Robin on his arm casually and not saying anything about the light dusting of pink on her face. He knew Robin could be funny about showing embarrassment or most emotions. She remained the hardest person to ever read by most people ... and yet Luffy could read her better than he could most books. Yo, I'm looking for Arlong, Luffy announced as casual as you please as he held up his free hand to wave slightly at the shocked fishmen, before noting Hatch-Eye nearby. Hey, are you hatchin'? Luffy asked, using Shaki's nickname for the fishman. He owed her for letting them raid the fridge and giving them all that information. Not to mention the fact that her husband saved their asses like a dozen times. The least he could do is try to spare her friend from an ass-kicking. Hayu, only one person can call me Tha. Hatch-Eye began, looking angry, only for Luffy to wave him down with a smile. Ezzy, I'm friends with Shaki. You should go visit her at the bar sometime. Despite her ripping most people off, she's still in business, Luffy said, making Hatch-Eye perk up happily at hearing that the boy was friends with Shaki. Really? Yeah, I should visit her. It's been years. I'll head to Sabayati right away, Hatch-Eye said happily as he ran off, much to the others' shock and disbelief. Not very smart, is he? Robin asked, amused as she looked at the shocked fishmen around them. No, most of the fishmen said, completely deadpan, and a few even face-palming. So which one of you is Arlong? Luffy asked, looking around for a second before his gaze narrowed in on the shark man in question. That'd be me. What do you want? Arlong demanded arrogantly as he stood up, making Luffy smirk again. I'm here to kick your ass. You made my navigator cry, Luffy said, completely blunt and making the fishmen laugh at them. I don't think they're taking you seriously, dear. Perhaps you should let me take out the guppies, Robin asked, not losing her calm smile a bit as she stared at the laughing fishmen. Go ahead. The small fry are all yours, but I call dibs on old Fang Face, Luffy said, smiling down at Robin, whose grin turned cruel as her eyes narrowed. In an instant, hands appeared on all of the small fries and grabbed them roughly. Clutch, Robin said calmly, listening to the sound of breaking bones and pain cries coming from her victims, while the villagers paled at how easily the one woman had taken down their super strong oppressors. What? I don't know who you are, lady, but you're dead, Arlong snarled as he and his remaining men ran towards Robin, who didn't look fazed. Since the swordsman of your group ran off, guess I'm stuck with you. Zoro intercepted one with his swords as the fishman swung around a sword like it was a bat. No one hurts a lady on my watch, Sanji said, kicking one fishman back as he balanced on his hands. Dee, don't mess with the great Captain Usopp said as he sniped another fishman, leaving only Arlong to rush at the history-loving assassin. He was a foot away from her when he stopped all of a sudden. All of the villagers, and even the rest of the crew aside from Robin, looked shocked. Luffy stood there holding Arlong by the nose a foot away from Robin, who hadn't bothered to move from her place at his side. "Hey fish boy, see that lady right there that you were trying to kill?" "Yeah, that's my fiancé," Luffy said calmly to the fish man, who was staring at him in disbelief. "And I hate it when someone thinks that they can attack her without going through me first." Luffy sneered as he tossed Arlong away and into the building, destroying the bottom portion as he took his arm from where Robin had been holding it. "I'll be right back, dear," Luffy said, kissing Robin's cheek and then taking off while she leaned against the wall near Johnny and Yasaku with her arms crossed. "And he bets on if he destroys the whole building?" Robin asked the two bounty hunters, making them snort slightly. "No bet, big sis Robin." The two chorused in unison just in time. The building began crumbling as Luffy knocked Arlong around like he was a pinball, destroying most of the ground floor. "Nami, you are my nakama," Luffy yelled from where he had just punched Arlong through the last supporting wall and beam, making the building come crumbling to the ground in a giant heap. "I'll kill you Rlong," muttered from where he had landed near Robin's feet as Nami wiped at her tears with a smile. Robin, however, had a sickly sweet smile on her face as she looked at the blush that was also on Nami's face. "I understand that you are grateful, but please remember Navigator-san," Robin said, looking at Nami, who turned to her while rubbing away the last traces of her tears. "That Luffy is mine." Robin paused for a second as she made several arms appear around Arlong, gripping him tightly. Robin's smile was dangerous as she clenched a fist. "And I don't share." Nami was paler than pale at the sound of Arlong's back and neck snapping in half. She made a mental note to never get on Robin's bad side or appear to fall for Luffy. She liked living. "Thanks. Seriously, why did you just turn down the offered escort through the comm belt?" Nami demanded as Tsuru began disembarking the ship for good, leaving her grandson and his friends to play pirate, as she called it, with a grin on her face. "Well, it'd be stupid to accept a marine escort when there's a wanted woman on board. They'd go after her for her bounty in a heartbeat," Luffy said, looking at Nami as if she were the stupid one. Nami paused for a second as she stared at Luffy before slowly turning to stare at Robin, along with the rest of the ship. "You did mention having a bounty on your head back at the Barrady," Usopp recalled as he stared at Robin, who was reading calmly while Luffy walked over to her. Yes. If you asked someone what it was for, they'd tell you I sunk several marine battleships as a child and then escaped a vice admiral," Robin said, turning another page in her book easily as Luffy sat next to her on the lawn chair, causing her to lean into his warmth without even thinking about it. "Really? Wow, they must put a heck of a bounty on you then," Sanji said, surprised, not having heard the story the first time it was told. "Yes, 79 million at the age of 8. I believe that's a record actually," Robin said, not bothered, as Luffy wrapped an arm around her, his hand resting protectively over her stomach without really thinking about it. No one else seemed to notice the placement of his hand, or if they did, they didn't think anything of it. Only Luffy and Robin knew about the little life within her, the one that was paused in her growth for now, but soon they'd resume growth of the baby and welcome her out into the world. They just needed to figure out when. They also had to be careful of Robin's stomach until the baby was born. Even with the baby's growth paused, they didn't want to risk something happening that would cause Robin to miscarry. "Holy crap." Nami gave a small laugh of disbelief while Robin merely smiled a bit wider and leant further into Luffy's side. It was a bit awkward with him being a few inches shorter than her 6'2" frame, but it felt nice to be pressed so securely against him with his chin on her head as he held her close. "Indeed. Luffy, did you want to do anything in the town before we left while the others were busy?" Robin asked, looking up from her book and making Luffy smile at her. "Well, I wanted to see the execution platform, but I'm pretty comfortable right here," Luffy said, pressing a kiss to her hair and making her smile warm slightly. "I think that sounds like a good idea. I wonder how many people were executed there," Robin said, smiling as she stood up, making Luffy pout at her while Usopp and Nami freaked out a bit. "So scary," Usopp said, shivering a bit while Nami's sweat dropped. How could they both be interested in something like that? Nami questioned, although the couple ignored the two. "Well, if that's what my queen wishes, then so shall it be," Luffy said, smiling as he stood up after a few seconds and held her hand. "Who knew you were such a charmer?" Robin said, giggling a bit at his words and decidedly not blushing as she followed him down the side of the ship. "You did when we started dating," Luffy pointed out cheerfully as he helped her down onto the dock and wrapped an arm around her waist as they walked through the town, Luffy already knowing the way and Robin more than happy to walk with him. "True, so when shall we start letting the baby grow?" Robin asked, smiling as she put one hand over her stomach as the two walked together away from the rest of the crew. "Whenever you wish, my queen. I can't wait to meet our princess," Luffy said, smiling as he stretched his arm around her waist until his hand rested over hers on the flat stomach. We can decide that later on." "What should we do about the Mr. Zero thing?" Robin asked as they got closer to the execution platform. Oh, the thing with Alabasta and Vivi, right. Oh well, you could pretend to be a double agent, I guess, and then when he tries to hurt you in that tomb you could kick his butt, or I could kick his ass before he has a chance to hurt you this time. Luffy said, thinking about it for a moment and making Robin smile slightly. Let's go with the double agent thing for now, only this time when you go meet Miss Goldenweek at Little Garden, do you think that we can invite her to the crew? Robin asked, looking away. She remembered the painter vividly when she had brought the girl into Baroque Works, and oftentimes when she was off duty and near where the girl was, the two would meet up and have tea, even though Robin preferred coffee. The painter girl. I don't see why not, but why do you ask? Luffy asked, looking at Robin, who gave a small smile as she looked down. She's only 9 years old. I found her being used as an experiment by some facilities and saved her. She followed me back to Baroque Works, and Robin trailed off a bit, wondering how exactly to phrase to her husband that she looked at the little girl the same way she looked at Chopper, at how she would look at their baby. You got attached. No worries. Of course she can join the crew. If you want, we can even adopt her as ours after we're married, Luffy said, smiling as he seemed to read Robin's mind, making her smile in relief and look at him happily. I'd like that, Luffy. I'm probably the closest thing she has to a mother at this point, Robin admitted, making Luffy grin as they finally arrived at the execution platform. His casually stated words were a promise that had Robin smiling wide enough that her face began to hurt as her heart felt ready to burst. Then that settles it. We'll invite her to the crew and adopt her. Instead of one pirate princess, there will be two. Tashishi. Oh, I see we picked up a hitchhiker, Robin said from the railing of the second floor, just having got back from turning in a false report to Crocodile about a new powerful marine who was the grandson of 2 vice admirals was heading their way with his crew. She downplayed Luffy's power a bit and outright lied about him being a marine without a devil fruit ... But by the time Crocodile figured it out, it'd be too late for the Sandman to do anything about it. This all Sunday, Vivi snarled at the woman, scared and shocked. Her eyes widened more when she saw the rest of the crew look at her and smile or nod in acknowledgement. Usopp went as far as the wave slightly at the scary woman. Robin, welcome back. How'd it go? Nami asked, knowing that Robin was going to try and make their new enemy underestimate them, but not knowing specifics. She just mentioned how he would listen to her since he never expected her to be a traitor, and took off on a giant turtle after they had left Reverse Mountain and just before they met Laboon. Quite well, Navigator-san. My employer is so used to me delivering factual reports that he didn't even bother to double-check the information before dismissing me to get some rest after my long-term spying mission, Robin said, smiling at the redhead as she jumped from the railing and landed casually on the deck. Don't worry, Miss Wednesday. Mr. 8 is all right. Knocked out and a little singed but alive, Robin said, smirking at the blue-haired woman who was staring at her in wide-eyed shock and horror. What are you doing here then? Aren't you here to kill me? Vivi demanded, looking frightened but making Robin snicker a bit. Why would I do a thing like that? After all, I'm the one who let you follow me to find out about Mr. Zero, Robin said with a mock-innocent expression on her face while the other Straw Hats looked confused and curious. Mr. Zero? Did he have something to do with the Mr. 8 and 9 people that attacked them along with the town? Well, only Zoro, Nami, and Luffy had been awake, but apparently the town was a bounty hunter's nest, and well, seeing Luffy be struck by lightning, survive without a scratch, and proclaim he was going to be the Pirate King in Loungetown. Yet considering who his family is and that he was taught by his grandparents, the Marines issued him a 80 million berry bounty right off the bat. You also told him who it was that knew his identity, didn't you? Vivi demanded, glaring while Luffy approached Robin from behind, even though she knew he was there. Don't worry, I promise Robin's a good girl. She just has to act like a bad girl because of how everyone else treated her, Luffy said, wrapping his arms around her from behind and placing his chin on her shoulder as he smiled at Vivi. Robin didn't blush, but her eyes went wide while the others blushed brightly at what Luffy called her. Luffy, please don't call me a bad or good girl out in public again. Just don't, Robin said, feeling her face heat up just a little bit but not admitting it as she leaned back into his smaller but stronger frame. Okay, I don't get why, but if that's what you want, Luffy said, looking confused but shrugging a bit as he nuzzled Robin's cheek. You know this criminal? Vivi asked as she glared at Robin and Luffy, making Luffy frown at her. Robin's not a crim ... Well, okay, she is a criminal, but she's helping you to, so be nice. Not to mention she's going to be my wife, and I don't appreciate anyone insulting her, Luffy said, looking at his temporary nakama upset and making her mouth drop open in disbelief as she stared at the too much to Robin's amusement. You killed Don Krieg for threatening her and proposed after kicking his ass, Sanji pointed out dryly, making Vivi pale further at that knowledge, while Nami didn't look surprised at all, really. Robin had threatened her with a smile while breaking a fishman's neck and back. Shishishi, of course I did. Robin is mine and I don't like it when someone threatens her. Luffy had the audacity to laugh at what Sanji said, making Vivi gulp. I can handle myself just fine, dear, and you know it, Robin said, smiling slightly at Luffy, who held her tighter but not enough so to be a problem. I know you can, but what kind of husband or even captain would I be if I let you get hurt? Luffy asked, grinning and discreetly pressing his hand flat against her belly, making her eyes flicker for a second before she realized what he meant. He knew she could protect herself, but what about the baby? Fighting right now would be dangerous for the baby. They hadn't really had time to understand that they were going to be parents when the war happened in their last timeline, but here they've had a whole year to realize that there was a tiny life within Robin's body. A tiny, beautiful little girl who was being carried in the archaeologist's womb. Too much stress and fighting, especially if the enemy managed to hit her stomach. It wouldn't be good for their baby. It might even make Robin miscarry, and she'd be damned to eternal hell before she lost their child. Whatever you say, dear. Robin relented a bit as she leant further into his chest, letting him hold her close protectively with his arms wrapped around her waist several times as if to shield her stomach and their child from the world. Besides, I detest Mr. 0 Second's plans, destroying countless lives and dreams just for a stupid weapon. Innocent men, women, and children slaughtered for nothing. If he wasn't keeping the world government off of my back, I'd have killed him myself a year ago at the least. Robin said, scowling as she thought of all those innocent people she had helped destroy just so she could get a look at a poneglyph that wasn't even the one she wanted. Those innocent children, babies. Even she didn't care back then. Didn't even think of it, but now that everything was put into perspective for her, now that she had most of her humanity back. You were on my side this whole time? Vivi asked softly as she stared at the woman who seemed to snap out of her rage and guilt as she smiled at the princess. Yes, I have quite the soft spot for children. Seeing so many lives destroyed before they could even live, disgusting. That's why I led him to you, as a show of silent support. He found out though, so I had to pretend to kill Mr. 8. Don't worry though, he's still alive, but that's our little secret, Robin said with a small wink at Vivi at the last bit, making her breath a sigh of relief at hearing that. Then thank you very much on behalf of Alabasta, Vivi said, bowing before Robin, who sprouted limbs to make Vivi stand upright. A princess should never bow before anyone but a king or queen. And I'm not quite the pirate queen just yet. Besides, save the thanks for after we take down Mr. 0. Robin said, smiling at Vivi, who was looking at her surprised but turned shocked at the part about being the pirate queen. Pirate queen? Vivi asked, surprised and shocked as she stared at the woman, who merely chuckled a bit. Of course, Robin said as if it were obvious as she tilted her head enough to kiss Luffy's cheek, which earned her a kiss in return. Vivi had a near mental breakdown when the concerned citizen captain only laughed and agreed with Robin's next words. What else would you call the pirate king's wife? What in the world had Vivi gotten herself into? Ready, Robin? Luffy asked, holding his hand out to his wife as they approached Little Garden, the others looking shocked or scared at the sight of the prehistoric island. Of course, Robin said, taking the hand and entwining their fingers out of habit as she stood up from the lawn chair. Where are you going? Nami asked, looking at the two as they went to the edge of the ship. To get a new crew member of sorts, Robin said vaguely as Luffy picked her up and jumped from the side of the boat, landing on his feet easily and setting her down. Now where is that wax house? Luffy mattered as he and Robin walked into the forest hand in hand. This way, dear, Robin said, walking towards where she knew Miss Goldenweek was and gently pulling Luffy along. Tashishi, so the baby? Luffy asked, reaching forward and touching Robin's stomach, which made the woman smile. What about her, dear? Robin asked, her own hand falling to her stomach without thinking about it. Should we start discussing time and names? Luffy asked, smiling up at her and making her lips twitch into a smile. Anything you're thinking of in particular? Robin asked, looking at Luffy briefly. Well, you aren't going to be going into the war this time, no matter how far along you are. I couldn't bear anything happening to the two of you, Luffy said sternly at first and turning upset at the end. While I destroyed the world for you, doubt your reaction would be much better. I'll stay on Amazon Lily this time then. Robin relented without a fight, knowing that she wouldn't have won and not even bothering to try. Why argue about keeping her baby girl safe? Definitely after the wedding though. That way no one thinks either of us were trapped. Robin changed the subject, making Luffy look at her and grin as he stopped her. Whenever you feel ready, just start the baby's growth. I trust you. You don't have to ask me. She's in her body, dear. Just let me know when you're officially pregnant, okay? Luffy asked as he knelt down and kissed Robin's exposed stomach. So considerate. You act so childish and immature, and yet when it comes to the things that are important, it's no wonder I feel in love with you, Robin said, smiling lovingly as she looked at him, before gently tugging him up to his feet. Really? Here I thought it was because of my stamina and rubber body, Luffy teased, making Robin chuckle as she leaned into him, pressing her barely covered chest into his uncovered one. She loved the fact that he usually left his vest open nowadays, and the fact that he forewent a shirt. He was scrawny and lanky, sure, but there was a definite muscle tone there, and she loved feeling it against her softer but still toned body. Oh, that helped. Like I'm sure some of my attributes helped you fall in love with me, Robin purred to him as he blushed a bit and looked at her wide-eyed. This is the first time you've flirted with me while dressed as a cowgirl, Luffy said, looking her up and down and really appreciating her outfit, even though he didn't like the fact that others saw so much of her body as well. Oh, maybe I can take you for a ride then, Robin breathed out with a sultry look, making Luffy's eyes widen as he went bright red in the face. Thanks to her, he knew what that alluded to and he would never tell her no. Are we sure the pregnancy hormones aren't already affecting you? You're never this openly seductive, Luffy asked, making Robin giggle a bit as she pulled away before his nose began to bleed. Sure, she would tease him a bit in public, but never this much. No, she usually saved this for when the two were alone in the captain's quarters of the ship, just enjoying the second chance. Now you mentioned something about the name. You already thought of a name for our baby? Robin asked, changing the subject and ruining the mood a bit as she held a hand over her stomach again. Yeah, like I'm sure you've been thinking of baby names ever since we learned about the little princess. Well, what do you think about Dad and Olivia? Monkey Dad and Olivia, or Monkey D. Olivia for short, Luffy asked, making Robin look at him wide and misty-eyed. She had told him about her mother, including her mother's name, and true, she thought about naming the baby after her mother, but she never thought Luffy would suggest it. Dadden is the closest to a mother I have. Olivia was your mom's name, right? So I figured we could name her after our moms, and besides, you wanted to know about the Will of D, so what better way than to raise someone with that initial? Luffy asked, making Robin smile widely and nod, a single tear slipping down her cheek before she kissed Luffy passionately. That's a perfect name, Robin murmured as she pulled away from his lips for a moment, before kissing him again as he held her close. This all Sunday, an excited girl yelled as a small blur launched at them, breaking the couple apart and hugging Robin tightly. Luffy had to refrain himself from grabbing the person and throwing them off of his wife. The only reason he restrained himself was because he had noticed that the blur was small. It was a child, likely the one they came to adopt. Hey sweetheart, it's great to see you too, and I have a surprise for you, Robin said, her voice soft and motherly, like it often was with Chopper, as she knelt down on the ground and hugged the girl close. What is it? Does it have something to do with that guy you were trying to eat? The small girl asked, looking at Robin excited and happy as she pointed at Luffy, making Robin giggle at the incorrect guess of what she and Luffy were doing. I wasn't trying to eat him, sweetie. I was kissing him, and yes, he's part of the surprise, but first. Robin trailed off a bit in order to use her powers to knock out the approaching Mr. 3. How would you like to be my daughter? I've been thinking that you should have a family to call yours, and I wouldn't mind adopting you, Robin asked, smiling slightly nervously at Golden Week. She hoped the small child agreed. She wouldn't force it. I'd love it if you were my mom. Can I have a real name then? Golden Week asked, making Robin's smile nearly rival Luffy's as she nodded, hugging the girl close. She already had a name in mind, one of the ones she thought of for the unborn baby. Of course. How does Makino sound? Monkey Clover Makino, Robin asked, making Luffy look at her, surprised for the use of his honorary older sister's name. Monkey, Golden Week asked, confused as she tilted her head slightly. Of course, that's going to be my last name in less than a month. That's your new daddy's last name, Robin said, looking up at Luffy and motioning him over from where he had stayed on the sidelines until Robin motioned for him. Makino-chan, this is Luffy, Monkey D. Luffy, my soon-to-be husband and your new dad, Robin said as Luffy knelt down next to them, smiling warmly at the little girl who stared at him before smiling widely. Her response was probably heard clear to the new world, and Luffy's grin was fit to split his face in half as he hugged his new daughter close. Daddy. Luffy had stopped the sabotage of the fight between the two giants easily before heading back to the ship with Robin at his side and Makino riding on his back. You won't have to try and hide your emotions anymore if you don't want to, sweetheart. Your new daddy and his crew would love to see you smiling and running around and enjoy being your age, Robin said softly as she ran her hand through Makino's hair, smiling as the little girl had a grin on her face that nearly matched Luffy's as his straw hat rested upon her head. Okay mama, Makino said, giggling when her new dad bounced her a bit, making Robin smile as she watched them interact. I knew you'd be a good father, Luffy, Robin said, smiling at her husband, who grinned at her with a happy blush on his cheeks. Boy, you two are finally back. We've been waiting forever and dealing with giants and everything. Sanji's got us an eternal pose to Alabasta, Nami began yelling as soon as they got near the ship, causing Makino to duck down a bit and hold onto her new dad's neck tightly. Take it easy on the yelling, Nami. You're scaring Makino, Luffy said, giving Nami a stern look. Okay, honestly, he knew she wasn't expecting a 9-year-old child to be brought back to the ship and that she had a soft spot for kids, but still, she was scaring his new baby girl. Who? Vivi asked, confused as Luffy picked Robin up in his arms and jumped up onto the ship, landing easily. A kid? Sanji asked, looking surprised at the sight of the girl on Luffy's back that was set down carefully only for her to hide behind Luffy and Robin's legs. Miss Golden Week? Vivi asked, shocked when she noticed who it was that was standing behind the power couple. Miss Wednesday? Makino asked, looking surprised and tense as she reached for her paints. It's okay, Makino. She's traveling with us back to her homeland. She isn't going to hurt you, and if she tries. Robin trailed off as she cracked her knuckles dangerously, eyes locked onto Vivi, who gulped slightly. Tashishi, don't worry baby girl. Your mom and I won't let anything happen to you. Luffy said, patting Makino's hatted head gently and causing the others to freeze a bit. Mom, Usopp asked, looking at Robin wide-eyed as she smiled warmly. Everyone meet Monkey Clover Makino, mine and Luffy's daughter, Robin said simply as she rested a hand on Makino's shoulder, giving the girl a reassuring smile as she did so. The reactions were immediate. Zoro narrowed his eyes. Sanji curled into the fetal position and cried. Vivi and Karu's jaws hit the deck. Usopp gaped in disbelief, and Nam was frozen, making simple ah sounds as she stared at the small family. Luffy, how old are you? Zoro asked at random, making Luffy blink. 17. Why? Luffy asked, looking confused. Kid, how old are you? Zoro asked, staring at Makino, who favored him with a blank look that made his skin crawl. 9. Makino answered honestly, and causing Zoro to nod slightly and smirk while Nam regained her brain function. You got Robin pregnant when you were 8. What the hell, Luffy? Nami demanded, looking faint and making Luffy look confused while Robin chuckled a bit. Isn't it obvious? Zoro asked, raising an eyebrow at the others as if they were stupid. The two of them took a liking to the kid and adopted her. Planned for it too, since they said they were coming here to get a new family member. Obviously, they only came here for her, Zoro said, making Robin and Makino nod in agreement, making the others relax a bit at hearing that. Yep, but adopted or not, she's still our daughter. Oh right, Makino, that's Zoro with the swords. Sanji is the chef, Nami is the navigator, and Usopp is the sharpshooter who tells pretty good stories since they're all lies. Ms. Wednesday is Vivi and Fishbait is the duck Karu, Luffy said, pointing to each person as he named them and making Vivi glare at Luffy for using Fishbait to describe her duck. Hi, Makino waved slightly, making Nami coo a bit at how shy she was. It's okay, baby girl. This crew is nothing like Mr. Zero and his ... gang. You can show emotions here, Robin said, smiling down at her daughter, who looked unsure for a moment before smiling slightly wider. You ... had to hide your emotions? Nami asked, looking upset as Makino nodded while Vivi shrugged slightly since she understood it. All the numbered agents wore masks over their emotions. I had to act cruel and cocky. Miss Golden Week was always laid back and near emotionless. Miss Monday always acted like she was the strongest. And I know for sure that at least Miss Doublefinger also had to hide her emotions, Vivi said, noting the ones she had observed the most. True, while Miss Doublefinger tends to get angry or fed up with weaklings and useless weapons as she deems them, she is actually really laid back and has a soft spot for children and animals. Robin agreed with a nod as they waved goodbye to the giants and started leaving the island. She didn't know how the others had made friends with the two different giants ... and to be honest, she wasn't sure she wanted to know. What in the Robin was as surprised as the others when the Island Eater came and tried to devour their ship. She had heard of it before but never seen it, since it never tried to eat her normal ride. Bianchi tried to eat the ship and not succeed because stupid goldfish, Luffy yelled, punching the giant monster fish away without much effort, making the giant's jaws drop open in disbelief along with most of the crew. Daddy's strong, Makino said with her eyes wide as saucers as she stared at how far the fish had flown. He's very strong, sweetie. He could even defeat Mr. Zero without much effort, Robin said, relaxing a bit and breathing easier as she released Makino from the protective hold that she had grabbed her into without thinking about it. It was just a reflex to grab her daughter and keep her back away from the fish in order to keep her safe. Really? Makino asked, her eyes widening a bit more as she stared at Luffy, who laughed a bit at the look on everyone's faces before walking over and plopping to sit down on the deck beside Makino. Yep, could if I wanted to, but how about we annoy the crap out of him first? Luffy asked, grinning widely at his daughter and wife, who stared at him for a moment before Robin smiled slightly. What's the plan, dear? Robin asked, wondering what amusing thing he'd come up with this time. She fondly and amusedly recalled the time he drank all that water and sprung a leak in the first timeline. That had been the most humorous thing she had seen in over 5 years at that point in time. Well, he still thinks that you're his loyal sidekick, right? Luffy asked, looking at Robin, who nodded her head immediately. Yes, I was given some time off, and he knows I often go to visit Makino when not on assignment, so it won't seem strange to him that I headed for Little Garden immediately after he gave me time off. Robin agreed with a curious look on her face, wanting to know just what her husband has planned. Well, when we get to Alabasta, you can still act like you're on his side, and if some of us get captured, which I probably will be, I could always piss him off until we get out of there and then go and kick his ass. Will you be safe with him until I can get to you? Luffy asked, looking at Robin worried, remembering how she had been stabbed last time and wanting to make sure it wouldn't happen again. I can act the part, no problem, just be careful of how far you push him. As for being safe around him, Robin's arm flashed a deep shiny black color for a moment before it disappeared, making Luffy blink before grinning widely. I could kill him if I wanted to, Robin said, smirking and making Makino look up at her wide-eyed at how strong her new mom is. Luffy just jumped up and kissed Robin's cheek, making her chuckle at his exuberant shout. My fiancé is badass. Don't feel so good, Robin said weakly from her lawn chair where she had been reading to Makino. Her face flushed slightly as she looked at her husband, who looked at her worried from across the deck. In record time he was by her side as Makino began to sit up and look worried. Did you get bitten by a bug or something? Luffy asked, his eyes widening slightly. He remembered Nami getting really sick from a bug bite in the last timeline, and she had managed to avoid that fate in this one, but it seems like Robin took her place. Crap. There's no telling what kind of diseases those old bugs have. Nami, take us to the nearest island with a doctor. Robin is really sick. Luffy yelled to the navigator as he picked Robin up gently and rushing her to their room to lay her on the bed. Luffy, Robin murmured weakly as she was gently settled on the bed and swaddled with blankets as a cool cloth was placed on her head. I'm here, love. I'm here. I'm so sorry. I should have warned you about this. This happened to Nami last time, but I never thought it had happened to you. Luffy apologized as he kissed her cheek and held her hand. He should have warned her. Should have thought that it was possible for her to be bitten. I'll be fine. You saved Nami last time, so now you can definitely save me, Robin said, smiling weakly at her husband, who gave her a weak smile in return. He didn't mention how close to death Nami had been. He didn't mention how the sickness nearly killed the navigator. He certainly didn't mention that he had no clue what would happen to the baby should Robin remain sick. He couldn't worry her like that. It wouldn't help her at all. He'd live with all the worry and guilt of what could happen by himself. It wouldn't be good for her to worry about it now. She didn't need the stress. That's right, I'll save you. No matter what, I'll save you both, Luffy said, kissing Robin's hand as his free hand dropped to rest on her stomach, rubbing it gently as if to reassure the unborn baby inside as well. Nearest island is Drum. We'll be there as soon as possible. Just hang on for a little longer, Robin, Nami said, poking her head into the door to give the news and glancing worriedly at how red Robin's face was. She was flushed brightly with fever and didn't look too good. That's where we'll find Chopper, and he'll join our crew. Makino would love having him for a playmate, don't you think? Maybe we should make sure that there's some books on pregnancy and child delivery in the library too. That way we know what to expect when the time comes. Sound good? Luffy asked softly as Nami ducked back to the deck to direct the ship, trying to engage his wife in conversation to keep her conscious and coherent. Frankie will have to build a nursery, Robin said, smiling slightly as she thought about the future, about her two daughters playing together and learning on the ship, surrounded by love and care and protective aunties and uncles. That's right. And a crib and some toys too. Makino and Olivia both are going to be spoiled rotten. As many toys as they want and able to pick whatever kind of fighting style they like when they're older, Luffy said, smiling and making Robin frown a bit. No weapons until they're 10 at least, Robin said sternly, despite how hard it was for her to speak right at the moment. All right, no weapons until they turn 10. That's no problem. They won't need to learn much fighting anyways, since we'll always be there to protect them. I won't let our children grow up alone or feeling lonely like we were. Oh, that reminds me. How many children do you want to have? Should we stop after Olivia is born, or should we give her and Makino both some more siblings? Luffy asked, smiling and asking a question he had been thinking about for a while. How many children exactly did Robin want them to have? He wouldn't mind a big family with lots of little ones with their mother's blue eyes or her soft smile. Let's wait and see how the war goes before we decide, Robin said, smiling slightly wider as she thought of a big group of children with their father's brown eyes and his wide grin, or maybe her blue eyes and his smile. Maybe one or two of them would inherit her mother's white hair. All right, we'll wait. I don't mind. You and them are all worth it no matter how long we wait, Luffy said, smiling as he nuzzled her cheek and switched out her cool cloth before there was a hesitant knock on the door. Yes, Luffy called, although he never took his eyes off of his sick but smiling wife. Is Mama going to be okay? Makino asked timidly as she cracked open the door, causing Robin to try and force herself to sit up. Lay down before you make yourself sicker. Don't worry, Makino. We're going to find a doctor to make your mama all better, Luffy said, keeping Robin seated sternly before turning a soft smile onto the 9-year-old who was hesitating in the doorway. Luffy holding one arm out to her was all it took for her to dash to his side and look down at Robin worriedly. Don't worry about me, sweetheart, Mama will be just fine, Robin said, trying to reassure her daughter that she'd be okay while Makino looked close to tears. Please be okay, Mama. I just got a mom and dad and I don't want to lose either one of you, Makino said worriedly before crawling into the bed slowly when her mother motioned her to. Don't worry, sweetie, Mama wouldn't leave you, Robin said, smiling tiredly as she cuddled her daughter close as well as she could. Makino, I've got a very special job for you, Luffy said, his ears twitching slightly as he heard them meet up with Wapol outside. Yes, Daddy, Makino asked, looking up at him. I need you to stay here and watch after your mama while I go deal with whatever idiot just decided to try and attack us, Luffy said, smiling warmly at his daughter as he took his hat off and placed it on Robin's stomach. I'll be right back, Luffy said, pressing a kiss to Robin and Makino's foreheads before turning and walking from the room. He had a former king to beat up and a doctor to recruit. Up there, huh? Robin, can you hear me, love? Luffy asked, turning to look at the love of his life as he stood in Dalton's house. Why yes, Robin breathed out, cracking her eyes open to stare up at her husband. She looked worse than before. Her skin was flushed deeper and she was shivering despite the blankets wrapped around her like a cocoon. I'm going to take you up the mountain to the doctor, all right? I need you to hang on. Just a little longer for me, okay? Luffy asked softly as he held his hand out towards his wife, who smiled up at him. What kind of pirate queen would be taken down by a bug bite? I trust you, Robin said, smiling weakly as she reached up and clasped her hand with his, her engagement ring glinting in the light. Just hang on a little longer, my queen, Luffy said, kissing her forehead before looking at the others who were gathered in the cabin. I'll take Robin and head up the mountain to the doctor. I'm entrusting Makino's safety to the rest of you. Anyone attacks you guys, try not to kill, but don't get yourselves hurt, Luffy ordered, causing the others to nod slightly although they frowned. Oi crap, Captain. If you get in a jam while carrying Robin ch1, then she could die from it. I'll go along and protect you both, Sanji said defiantly, making Luffy stare at him before nodding. Fine, I'll accept it this time, but next time I give an order, I expect you to listen, Luffy said, his eyes narrowed. He let his crew walk all over him last time, and that led to them getting into a lot of needless trouble. He wouldn't make that mistake again. Despite knowing what happened last time with Nami, Luffy was too worried about Robin to really change anything. He could only focus on her safety and hope both she and their unborn child made it. He climbed the mountain, uncaring and barely feeling most of his skin freeze and break to the point he was bleeding badly and frostbitten. He climbed the mountain, tearing his hands and feet apart, Robin on his back and Sanji clenched in his jaws. He climbed the mountain and finally made it to the top, where Chopper grabbed him when he started falling again. Crap, brat. What the hell were you thinking? Kira, Luffy remembered the old doctorine's name to be, demanded, staring shocked and concerned as she looked at Luffy, who placed Sanji on the ground and gently handed Robin to the old woman. Please ... save them ... they're my friends and she ... she's my wife, Luffy begged, bowing his head before the old woman, who held Robin close and looked at the dark-haired woman surprised. We'll take care of them, kid, but you're torn up too, Kira said as Chopper in his heavy point picked up Sanji and moved to pick up Luffy, who remained kneeling with his head bowed. Please help her. Robin is ... she's very sick and she ... she's pregnant, Luffy said, causing a brief look of shock and horror to appear on Kira's face as she digested that piece of news. Don't worry, kid. I'll do all I can to save them both, and the blonde guy too. Just ... just rest. Your family is in good hands, Kira said, swallowing thickly as she quickly moved towards the castle to get her cargo out of the coal. Chopper, bring them both inside immediately, Kira ordered the reindeer, who nodded and gently picked up Luffy as well. Luffy's vision went black as Kira called for several different medicines. Luffy, Robin said immediately when she woke up from her sickness, sitting straight up in bed and looking around wearily. It looked like she was in an old stone castle ... She spotted a familiar face hiding the wrong way behind the door and smiled softly. Hello there, Robin said softly to Chopper, who backed further behind the door and gave a meek wave. My name is Nico Robin, soon to be Monkey Robin. What's yours? Robin asked, treating Chopper as if he were a normal person, much to his surprise and pleasure. Most people never treated him like this. Chopper, Tony Chopper. You ... you shouldn't be moving around so much. You were really sick, Chopper said as Robin gave him a warm smile before swinging her legs off of the bed. She felt a bit weak and dizzy, yes, but it was nothing she couldn't overcome. I'll be alright, little one, don't worry. I have to find my husband though. He's probably worried sick, Robin said, wondering where Luffy was. She had thought he'd be right beside her bed when she woke up ... How long had she been out? He's in another room. He was hurt pretty badly getting you and that other guy up here, and we had to treat him immediately for frostbite. You're lucky, you know, Chopper asked, gaining a bit more confidence as he looked at Robin, who gave him a curious smile. I'm lucky in several ways, little one. You'll have to be more specific, Robin said gently, and making Chopper eep when Kira appeared behind him. You're lucky your husband got you here when he did. If he was an hour later, then you'd still live, but you'd have miscarried, Kira said bluntly as she looked at the younger woman, whose eyes widened and her face paled as her hand shot to her stomach. Robin, a familiar voice cried as Luffy darted past Kira, who had moved just in time to avoid being run over, and towards his wife. He stopped just short of touching her, slowing down and gently pulling her into a hug. Are you all right? You're all right, right? Do you need anything? Should you sleep longer? Is the baby all right? Luffy asked, making Robin smile but lean up from her sitting position to kiss him in order to silence him for a second. I'm fine, dear. The doctors managed to save both of us. What about you? The cute reindeer doctor said you got hurt badly bringing me up here, Robin asked, looking at Luffy worried and taking note of all the bandages wrapped around his body. He looked like he got into a fight with Rob Lucci again, but he was grinning widely in relief. I'll be fine. Should have remembered to bring a rope to climb the mountain with is all. I'm just happy you both are all right. Luffy said, nuzzling Robin's hair as his hand dropped protectively to her belly. Thanks to you, Robin said, smiling at him while Luffy grinned back at her before remembering something. Oh yes, Sanji played bodyguard on the way to the mountain despite me ordering the crew to stay with Makino. He has a cracked spine but he's expected to be okay as well. He got into a fight with Mother Nature and he didn't really win, Luffy said with a wince as he remembered Sanji hitting the rock again. Is Makino alright? Where is she? Robin asked, alert immediately as she looked around for her daughter as if expecting the girl to come barreling into the room as well. She's fine, love. Our baby girl is okay. She's with Nami and Vivi and Usopp ... and Zoro too if he didn't get lost again, Luffy said, calming his wife down and making her relax while Kureha raised an eyebrow. I know kids these days are starting younger and younger, but you two already have one kid on a pirate ship and are expecting another, Kureha asked, reminding the two that they weren't alone. To be fair, Makino is our adopted 9-year-old daughter who worked for a bounty hunter organization before we adopted her. Besides, where else would the children be? It's not like wanted criminals like us can settle down on an island and not expect the Marines to come knocking, Luffy said, shrugging it off. Neither he nor Robin had a problem with raising their children on a pirate ship. They could ask Frankie to make it baby-proof and child-friendly when he built the Thousand Sunny, which would mean there was no danger for their baby on the ship, especially since if anyone attacked their baby, Robin and Luffy would retaliate with extreme prejudice. That's another question I have. Your body shows signs of being pregnant for a while now, much longer than the 2-month growth the baby is at. Mind telling me how that's possible? Kureha asked, crossing her arms over her chest as she looked at Robin, who responded by growing a hand from the wall nearby. I ate the bloom fruit, but it was given the wrong name. It allows me to grow things or pause things in their growth. This includes my own body or the one inside of it. We ... we want to be officially married and together for a while before I resume the pregnancy. I don't want the crew to think that Luffy and I were trapped together because of the baby or think that our baby was an accident, Robin said easily, knowing she'd have to tell Chopper this anyway since he is the doctor of the crew. It'd be hard to hide a pregnancy from the one who would be there for it the entire time. Understandable. Whatever, not like it's my business anyways. Anyways, we should probably discuss your payment for my services, Kureha said, grinning slightly at that and making Luffy nod. Name it, Luffy said, simply making everyone look at him in surprise. Huh? Chopper asked, looking lost and making Luffy smile at him. Name whatever price you want. I'll give you anything. It's the least I can do, Luffy said, smiling as he glanced at Robin, who smiled and felt tears in her eyes at hearing Luffy's next sentence, which had Kureha mildly impressed and Chopper shocked. After all, you saved 2 of the 3 most important things in my life. Out of my wife and 2 children ... You saved my wife and our unborn child. I'll pay whatever price you want. Just name it. Luffy was dead serious about it too. Ace, Luffy said, grinning widely when he saw his brother jump up onto the Mary again just before Robin left to keep her cover so she could help them later. Hey there, Lou. How you been doing? Ace asked, tipping his hat to his little brother's crew before he suddenly had an armful of excited 17-year-old pirate captain. I'm great, Ace. Come on quick. I want you to meet the crew before Robin has to leave to do her job, Luffy said, grinning as he hugged his brother for a moment before letting go and dragging the older boy over to his crewmates, who were gaping or staring in disbelief. That's Zoro with the swords. Sanji is the chef, Usopp over there is our sharpshooter, and Nami is our navigator. Vivi and Fishbait are traveling with us for a while until we get her home, Luffy said, pointing at everyone in turn and causing Vivi to scowl at him as Ace greeted the rest of the crew. Karu is not Fishbait, Vivi yelled, her teeth turning into fangs somehow, making Luffy laugh a bit before he dragged Ace over to Robin and Makino. Ace, this is Robin and Makino. Robin is going to be my wife and Makino here is our daughter, Luffy said, grinning as he introduced his brother to his wife and child. Nice to meet ... Wait ... What? Ace began out of reflex before pausing as Luffy's words sunk into his head. His baby brother was married with a kid ... His 17-year-old baby brother was married to the older lady with a 9-year-old daughter hiding behind her legs. What the hell, Luffy? I only left you alone for 3 years and suddenly you have a wife and kid. Why is this the first time I'm hearing about it? Ace asked, beginning to freak the heck out as he whipped around to look at his brother in disbelief. Yep, and because you never call or write me. I would have told you, but you never gave me your den mushy number or anything, Luffy said, pouting slightly as he looked at his brother, who gave a small guilty face at that before taking out a piece of paper and quickly scribbling something down. Okay, yeah, he didn't really leave a way for Luffy to contact him ... He understood that. Here, this is the den mushy number of the Moby Dick. Feel free to call it any time, whether I'm there or not. I've told the others so much about you, most are curious as to what you're like, Ace said, shoving the card into Luffy's hand and making the boy blink. Oh yeah, Tibeard was Ace's captain ... That could be useful for later. The rest of the crew and even Robin were surprised by this, although Robin didn't show it on her face. Okay, Robin, this is my big brother Ace. Makino, this is your uncle Ace, no need to be shy, Luffy said, shrugging it off as his crew gaped at him in disbelief. Instead, he had focused on how Makino was still nervously hiding behind her mom's legs. Apparently, Ace's outburst had scared her more than just meeting someone new had. It's nice to meet the big brother my love speaks so highly. I had no idea that the Ace he keeps telling me about was also the famous Fire Fist Ace of the Whitebeard Pirates, Robin said, lying through her teeth at the second part and not showing it as she smiled pleasantly at Ace. The rest of the crew and Makino were wide-eyed at hearing that such a famous and dangerous pirate was their captain's brother. Nico, Robin, right. The infamous devil's child ... You're a lot nicer than the rumors say. Please take care of my baby brother, all right? Ace asked, smiling at the woman as he shook her hand. We're going to be married. We take care of each other and any children, Robin said, dropping her hand to rest on Makino's head, after beating down the by now reflex of putting a hand over her stomach. Oh, planning on a big family, huh? Ace asked with a grin, making Robin smile wider as she glanced at Luffy. Well, Makino could use some younger siblings, and besides, being alone for so long ... It makes you want to make sure no one else ever feels like that, especially your children, Robin said, making Ace frown and nod in agreement seriously. How does 100 to start with sound to you, dear? Robin asked, smirking slightly and making the crew freak out or gape in disbelief while Luffy walked over and wrapped his arms around Robin's waist several times. As many as you want, dear, Luffy said simply as he leaned up to kiss her cheek, making her lean into him with a small chuckle. Ace smiled at how mature his brother had gotten before looking at the nervous painter. And you're my oldest, and so far only niece, huh? Nice to meet you. I'm your Uncle Ace, Ace said, crouching down to smile at Makino warmly as she peered at him curiously and warily. Mama and Daddy gave me the name Makino when they adopted me. Monkey Clover Makino, Makino said, making Ace blink for a second before grinning. Hey, a family member without the middle initial of D, that's a first, but you have a good name. Luffy gave you the name Makino after the woman who treated us like her brothers back when we were kids. She's a beautiful and kind woman who wasn't afraid of savage kids or even bandits. You're going to be something special with a name like that. I can tell, Ace said, giving Makino an encouraging smile while Luffy snickered. Yeah, and not just because you had a crush on Makino-ni-san when you were little, huh, Ace? Luffy asked teasingly, making Ace shoot him a glare that didn't have any heat behind it. What's a Whitebeard commander doing all the way out here in paradise, though? Robin asked, looking at Ace, who frowned as he stood up straight. Looking for someone named Blackbeard. He's a traitor. Killed a crewmate over a devil fruit and then vanished. I heard about him being sighted around here earlier, so I thought I'd try to catch him here, Ace said, scowling and making Luffy scowl as well while Robin frowned. Do you want any help? Luffy asked, his eyes darkening slightly as his hat shadowed them. No, I can handle this, Luffy. Besides, it's a problem for the Whitebeard pirates, not the Straw Hat pirates. Just worry about yourselves and leave Blackbeard to me, Ace said, shaking his head in the negative at the offer of help. Luffy frowned, but he had expected this much from his brother. That didn't stop him from saying something that had Ace laughing while Robin blushed and Makino giggled amused. Robin had been joking. Apparently no one had told Luffy that. Alright, but don't do anything stupid, okay? I want you to be there when Robin and I start having children so you can meet them. They'll love their Uncle Ace, every last one of the 100 or so kids. For some reason I feel like singing, Luffy muttered to himself aloud as they were waiting on Robin to return with Vivi, most of the Straw Hats and Smoker stuck in a sea stone cage in front of Crocodile himself. Not that Luffy cared. Singing. Now, Straw Hat, are you nuts? Smoker asked, looking at the rather calm-looking pirate who grinned at him. Do you have to ask? Luffy asked, grinning at Smoker before turning to look at Crocodile with an amused glint in his eyes. He could sense Makino, who had claimed to be picked up by Robin when she found Little Garden attacked, and Robin approaching with Vivi, and they were about to come in the room. What would you even sing in this situation? Nami asked, sweat dropping at her captain, who didn't look concerned at all. I have the perfect song, Luffy said, clearing his throat and stretching his vocal cords to make his voice a little deeper. He hummed for a second until Robin and Makino were halfway down the stairs, and then he began to sing. Never smile at a crocodile. No, you can't get friendly with a crocodile. Luffy began to sing, causing the others to freeze as he grinned at Sir Crocodile. Robin, Vivi, and Makino all froze at the bottom step as they heard the lyrics. Don't be taken in by his welcome grin. He's imagining how well he'd fit within your skin. Never smile at a crocodile. Luffy continued to sing, causing Usopp to begin snickering, which set off everyone else. Zoro and Nami were roaring in laughter. Makino was on the floor clutching her stomach. Robin was leaning against the wall. Vivi had bent over. Usopp was near collapsed against the cage bars, and Smoker himself was laughing pretty heavily at the song. You may very well be well read, with lots of etiquette in your head. Luffy continued singing despite all the laughter and Crocodile's face darkening in anger. I'm going to enjoy killing you. Crocodile growled at Luffy as Robin and Makino began pulling themselves together alongside Smoker. Let me out of this cage and we can duke it out there in the desert. See which one of us wins. I'll kick your ass, Luffy said, only to yelp when Robin picked up a rock and threw it at him. Watch your language. There are little ears around, Robin said, frowning at her husband to be as she looked pointedly down at Makino, who was looking confused. Oh, sorry. Don't repeat that word, okay, kid? Luffy asked, looking at Makino and making Smoker and Crocodile's eyes narrow at the interaction. Now that I think of it, she was there at Logtown too. Seemed more amused than anything when those other pirates attempted to execute Straw Hat, Smoker thought, narrowing his eyes at Robin thoughtfully. TCH, stupid woman. As if Miss Goldenweek hasn't heard worse before. Ugh, if I didn't need Robin, then I'd kill them both right now. As soon as her usefulness runs out, I'll kill Goldenweek and reveal the truth to Robin. That ought to break the haughty bitch, Crocodile thought, glaring at Robin, who smiled down at Makino and patted her head. Just ignore him, okay, sweetie? That's a grown-up word you can't say, Robin said, making Makino blink up at her curiously but nod with a small smile. It felt nice to have a mom and dad. Yeah, just ignore anything bad you hear me say. I was raised by mountain bandits, Luffy said, nodding and making everyone look at him, even Crocodile. Are you serious? Nami asked, looking at Luffy in disbelief and making him blink at her. No, I'm Luffy. Sirius is a constellation, Luffy said, making Nami's eyebrow twitch while Usopp leaned over towards Zoro. Am I the only one scared that he knows what a constellation is but can't navigate? Usopp asked in a whisper, earning a look from Zoro and a small smirk from Smoker, who had overheard. But yet Gramps left me with the Mount Corvo bandits when I was 7 to become a strong marine. The leader Dadden was my foster mom, but that didn't stop me from being raised like a bandit, Luffy said, nodding and making Smoker look up at him at the mention of marine. Your grandpa left you with bandits so you would become a marine? Smoker asked, looking at Luffy in disbelief and making him nod. Yeah, I don't get it either, and Grandma said it didn't make any sense, but then again Grandpa never does. He wanted me to be like him and Grandma, Luffy said with a shrug of his shoulders at the end. Your grandparents are Marines? Smoker asked, his face going blank as he tried to work out which Marines could be the grandparents to this strong pirate. Yep, Grandma went with us around East Blue to check out the corruption in the Marines there, but she had to go back to the Grand Line and Marine Fort after we hit Logtown. Couldn't be seen in the company of pirates after all, Luffy said, nodding while Smoker's brain shut down for a moment, recalling who exactly he had seen get off of Luffy's ship back at his town. Vice Admiral Tsuru is your grandmother. Who the hell is your grandfather? Smoker asked, his voice completely blank while Crocodile's eyes widened as he looked at Luffy, who nodded. Yep, that's Grandma. Gramps is a vice admiral too, though. Maybe that's why his hits always hurt so much, Luffy said, unbothered by the shocked looks on all but Robin's faces at that. The crew aside from Chopper knew his grandmother was a vice admiral, but his grandfather too. Straw Hat ... What's your full name again? Smoker asked, feeling a migraine coming on as he had a very bad feeling about this. Monkey D. Luffy. Why? Luffy asked, making Smoker tilt his head back to smack it into the cage bars for a second while Crocodile's eyes widened in disbelief and shock. Monkey, as in Vice Admiral Monkey D. Garp Monkey. Garp the Fist? Crocodile asked, slowly beginning to realize his mistake. He thought that the brat was just another arrogant pirate upstart who had a too big heart for his own good and not a lot of strength to back it up. He didn't know the brat was the grandchildren from 2 vice admirals that could knock him about like he was a punching bag. Yeah, that's Gramps. Why? Luffy asked, causing Crocodile to look at him and then turn and throw the key to the banana gators. Nope. Let's go all Sunday. I'm not dealing with this. Nope. Crocodile forgot all about his megalomaniac speech and being mercilessly cruel to the princess. Nope, he wasn't dealing with this. Robin chuckled a bit as she followed him, Makino firmly latching onto her hand. Crocodile literally noped the fuck out of there at hearing who Luffy's grandparents were. She would never let him live this down. HMPH, I have a surprise for you, Robin. Consider it a going-away present, Crocodile said, tossing some papers to Robin after she lied to him about the poneglyph. Research notes, Robin asked, confused as she looked at the papers. Her eyes widened slightly when she noticed the facility number and location. The place I found Miss Goldenweek, Robin murmured aloud as she sprouted a few eyes to keep watch over Crocodile while she scanned the papers quickly. That's right. Turns out when you were in the hospital once a few years ago, they had taken something from you. They had taken some of your eggs, Crocodile said with a cruel grin on his face while Robin's hand shot to her stomach, lightly tracing a small, almost unnoticeable scar over her navel. They, combining 2 devil fruits ... They combined my eggs with a man's sperm. They ... They created several children. Robin's eyes were wide in horror as she looked at that. 8-year-old rubber boy from Goa ... Luffy ... They made several of my children. Luffy is the father. Robin's eyes devoured the pages, her face becoming paler as she slowly sat down in shock. Three children. 2 girls and 1 boy. The first batch. I had triplet children, Robin murmured as she looked at the attached pictures of the 3. One of the girls had her blue eyes, but the other 2 children had Luffy's eyes, and all 3 had messy tufts of dark hair. Devil fruits, successfully passed down, but experiments couldn't be controlled. Robin's eyes were stuck on one word as she finished the page. Terminated. They killed my children. Robin's eyes filled with tears, making Crocodile grin savagely. The first 3, yes, but look at the next page, Crocodile said, causing Robin to shakily turn the page. Another child, a little girl. No noticeable devil fruit powers, but something is strange with this girl. She could be useful. Robin could barely believe it when she looked at the picture. A little girl she knew very well was staring back at her. A little girl with reddish brown hair and dark brown, nearly black eyes. This Golden Week. She's my daughter, Robin said, swallowing thickly. This didn't change anything really. Makino had been her daughter before she knew about their blood relation, but this this made so many things make sense to Robin. Why Makino had always seemed slightly familiar in her mannerisms. Why she had always been so protective of the girl ever since finding and saving her. Why she had felt so attached to the child. That's right, and guess what? I knew you'd betray me, so I gave Mr. One orders to find and kill Golden Week as soon as he could. Now that you know the truth, I'm going to kill you, Crocodile said with an arrogant laugh that had Robin feeling scared for her daughter and terrified. You're trying to kill my daughter. Robin stood up, shaking in rage, clutching the papers tightly in her hand as her cowboy hat shaded her eyes. I'll fucking kill you, Robin roared as she appeared in front of Crocodile in a shower of flower petals. She saw the arrogant smile on his face and proceeded to wipe it off with a mean right straight. She wasn't as physically strong as her husband or even the other 2 monster trio members, but his shock added to her rage and the full weight of her body behind the punch. Yeah, she sent him back at least several feet. Get up and fight me, you cowardly little shit. You were talking such a big game a minute ago when you threatened a 9-year-old. Robin yelled at him, her eyes blazing with protective maternal anger and her arms and legs pitch black. You know, hacky. Crocodile was surprised before he was kicked into the wall nearby by another fighter. Luffy was now standing beside his wife with a smirk on his face and his foot still raised from where his pitch-black sandal had knocked Crocodile into the wall. He was holding back a good bit. Luffy, he gave orders for our daughter to be killed, Robin said, looking at her husband, whose entire face became cold and emotionless in a heartbeat as he lowered his foot. You go find Makino and protect her. She's with Vivi. I'll take care of him, Luffy said, pulling a hidden dagger from his pants and looking ready to run Crocodile through. You 2 know each other already? Crocodile asked, his eyes narrowed as he looked between the 2, making Robin smirk slightly as she moved to leave. Of course, he's the man I'm engaged to marry. And you not only threatened me but our daughter in front of my overprotective husband-to-be, Robin said before taking off out the door as fast as her legs could move. And since those long-toned legs weren't for show, that was pretty fast. Why, you really are engaged to the devil's child? Crocodile asked, making Luffy nod. In the background, the king was just gaping at all that happened and silently promising that he'd never get on that woman's bad side. Yep, we're trying to find some place to marry us that won't try to arrest us afterwards. But you made a huge mistake. Not only did you threaten my wife to be but you also threatened Makino our daughter, or as you know her, Miss Golden Week, Luffy said, twirling his knife a bit as he coated it in haki. He wouldn't kill Crocodile. He'd need his help if he had to escape Impel Down again, but he wouldn't let him threaten his family and get away with it. How did you already know about the facility's experiments? Crocodile asked, looking confused and shocked at that, as well as a bit pale. Experiments? What experiments? Robin and I adopted Makino like 2 weeks ago, Luffy said, confused at that and making Crocodile blink for a second. So Luffy didn't know that Golden Week was his by blood. Hey, Straw Hat, I'll make you a deal. You take out Crocodile and stop this war. I'll marry you and that woman myself. King Cobra called from where he was sitting on the floor, making Luffy such his teeth a bit. I was already going to take this overgrown banana gator down. He not only hurt Vivi, my friend and Nakama, but he also threatened my wife and daughter, Luffy said, making the king smile slightly as he watched Luffy cut a deep gash on Crocodile's arm and then proceed to beat the ever-loving crap out of him, punching him through the bedrock easily. Come on, Vivi is worried about you. And I'm worried about my Nakama, Luffy said, picking up Cobra with one arm when the king was unable to move as the ruins started crumbling down. Yeah, we both have daughters to check on, Cobra agreed, smiling slightly and not at all embarrassed at being carried. He could feel a bit of a kinship with this pirate, fighting against what seemed to be an impossible adversary, fighting against a more experienced and, presumably, dangerous pirate because he had threatened those close to him. From one man worried about his daughter to another. The 2 had a certain understanding. After all, women weren't the only ones able to be fiercely protective of their children. Sorry, we were given orders to kill you, Golden Week. Nothing personal, the Mr. 7 pair were saying to Makino, who was sweating just barely as she mixed her paints, ready to try a new move she had been working on. Vivi and her guard Pell were nearby, trying to both protect Makino and get the bomb away. Vivi had pulled her slashers and was sweating hard as she got ready to fight someone who clearly outmatched her in power. She wouldn't give up though. She couldn't let Makino fight these two on her own despite outranking them. They were after a 9-year-old child, and Vivi would die before letting them hurt the little girl. She didn't get a chance to. Not my daughter, you assholes. A woman's voice screamed as Robin appeared flying on a pair of wings made out of hands, slamming into the Mr. 7 pair like a train and knocking them away from Makino. The normally calm, graceful, and mature woman landed in front of Makino, crouched protectively and growling like a lioness. This all Sunday? Mr. 7 asked, shocked at the sight of his superior. The name is Robin. Devil's child Nico Robin, and you shits just tried to kill my daughter. Robin snarled at them like some kind of predatory beast. She had just learned that she had triplet children that had been killed because she didn't know about them and was unable to protect them. She had just learned that the facility made her daughter, her Makina, to solely be a weapon, and if Robin hadn't shown up when she had and found the girl, she wasn't sure what they would have done to her little girl. Now Crocodile had threatened her daughter. Her daughter had a kill-on-sight order for the rest of Baroque Works to take her out. Robin wouldn't let any of her children be killed. Not when she was able to stop it. Daughter? The pair asked, shocked and turning really pale when they saw the almost feral snarl on Robin's face as flower petals fell from her like snow from the sky. Robin slammed her hands into the stones beneath her, and when she lifted them, 2 stone swords rose as well, making everyone's jaws drop open in shock. With a protective and enraged roar, Robin went after the two with vengeance, causing them both to yelp and run for their lives. Are you okay, Makino? Did they hurt you at all? Robin asked, immediately dropping the weapons and kneeling down to check her daughter over for injuries once the enemies were gone, looking relieved to find barely a few hairs out of place on her head. I'm fine, Mama, but you were really angry. What's wrong? Makino asked, looking worried as Robin tugged her into a protective and loving hug. Nothing's wrong, baby. I found out some shocking information. The facility you were at, they made you from parts of me and your daddy. You were born to be ours, Robin said, burying her face in her daughter's hair, her sun hat missing somewhere in town. I'm sorry I didn't find you earlier. I'm sorry I couldn't save your brother and sisters. Robin murmured apologies to her daughter as she held her close, tears stinging her eyes. She didn't know if this was one of the changes of this new timeline or if this had been true in the original timeline as well, but either way she hated that she wasn't there. For God's sake, she wanted to be there for her children. Yet a set of triplets that were hers and she didn't know it were killed. Looks like Luffy is done with Crocodile, Robin said, quickly trying to compose herself, tensing and on high alert when she heard the street below break, but relaxing when she saw it was just Crocodile being sent several meters into the sky. I have siblings, Makino asked, looking up at Robin surprised and her eyes lighting up. You did. I got there in time to save you, but they were already. Robin trailed off, unable to say it right yet, making Makino deflate and look sad. I knew I was different, but did they really make me in there? That lab, with those older kids? Makino asked, making Robin nod but look sad. Yes, but it doesn't change anything. Made in a lab or born from my body, you're still our daughter, Robin said softly, looking her daughter straight in the eyes so that she knew it was the truth. Those older kids, blue, brown, and braid, those were my siblings, weren't they? The girl with the really pretty blue eyes and wide grin, the boy with the brown eyes and messy hair, and the girl with brown eyes and a soft smile, those were my big sisters and my big brother, Makino said, making Robin's eyes fill with tears as she gathered her daughter in a hug and picked her up easily. Yes, baby girl, they were. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never knew. Robin began to sob lightly as she hugged her daughter close while Vivi nearby looked close to tears. It's not your fault, Mama. I don't blame you. They didn't either. They told me before they were shot they wanted to meet their mom and dad. I saw it, them being shot, Makino said, her eyes filling with tears as she buried her face in her mother's chest. Brown went down first. He was trying to protect Blue and Braid. Blue managed to hit one of the guards but got stabbed in the neck. Braid just stood there. She looked them in the eye and smiled at them. Mama. She smiled at them when they shot her. They all smiled. Even when they died, they smiled. Why, Mama? Makino asked, beginning to outright sob as she recalled the memories she's long since repressed. Vivi nearby was sobbing as well, and Robin didn't even notice Pell taking the bomb away and flying upwards. Oh baby, I wish I knew. Mama's sorry. So sorry. She should have been there. Robin began to outright sob as well, her heart breaking all over again for her youngest born child and her 3 children she never got to meet. They had been D's. She knew just by what her daughter said about their deaths. They had smiled when they died and they were just like their father. Robin, Makino, what happened? Luffy asked, appearing at the top of the clock tower with Cobra in his arms and looking alarmed at the sight of his sobbing wife and daughter. Daddy, Makino said while Robin choked out another sob. Oh gods, Luffy, how was she going to tell him about this? How could she tell him they had 3 children they never knew of? 3 children that were dead. To think one of those despicable facilities is here in Alabasta as well. King Cobra growled as they got ready to stop the fighting between the military and the rebels after hearing about what the facilities had done. Robin was carrying Makino on her hip easily, the girl being smaller than the average 9-year-old helping immensely with that, and Vivi was nearby looking upset and devastated but determined. Crocodile was unconscious under Luffy's arm after the rubber man had caught him as he fell back down to earth. After this I'm destroying it and saving whoever they have in there, Luffy said, his voice and face carefully blank despite the tear tracks on his face. He had 3 older children. He had 3 children he never knew of. 3 children he wasn't there to protect. Say the word and you'll have most of my army assisting you as well as my full permission. Cobra said, his own eyes still a bit red from what he had heard. The young couple had learned they had lost 3 children they never knew of. As a father himself, he could understand the rage and anger and feeling of helplessness Luffy must be feeling now. While your permission would keep me from getting in trouble with the government more than I already am. You might want to keep your army away. I won't be holding back and I can't guarantee their safety, Luffy said as the 2 men approached where the armies were about to collide, causing Luffy to stop Cobra with a hand on the shoulder. You and Vivi talk some sense into them after I stop them. Hang on for just a little bit, yeah? Luffy asked, looking at Vivi and Cobra, who nodded in understanding before Luffy looked at Robin and Makino. Stay here and keep an eye on them and each other, okay? I'll be right back, Luffy said, stepping over and kissing their foreheads tenderly. Don't traumatize our daughter or you'll be on the couch for our honeymoon. Robin managed to weakly joke, her smile a bit wobbly as she desperately tried to regain her composure. Cobra winced visibly at the threat while Vivi blushed a bit as Luffy laughed for the first time since fighting Crocodile. We don't even have a couch, Luffy reminded Robin before he turned and jumped, dropping through the air and landing with a crash in between the 2 armies before they could meet head-on and toss Crocodile's body to the ground at his feet inside of the mini crater. That's enough. This fighting has gone on long enough. The real criminal behind all of this is beaten, Luffy said, glaring darkly from under his hat as he looked at the shocked armies. If anyone wants to keep fighting, then fight me, Luffy said, pulling out his dagger, letting everyone get a good look at the curved blade that was completely black. I'll take you all on, Luffy finished as an invisible weight seemed to press down on the armies, freezing them in their tracks. This is the Marines, make way. A woman could be heard yelling as a group of Marines arrived and began making their way through the armies as Luffy reined in his hack. Straw Hat Luffy, normally I'd be trying to arrest you, but considering the circumstances, Baroque Works ships have been captured and found containing dance powder. Sir Crocodile is hereby under arrest and stripped of his status as a warlord, Tashigi said, announcing it to the people of Alabasta as she pulled out sea-stone handcuffs and secured them around the slowly regaining conscious warlord. Monkey D. Luffy, thank you for stopping his schemes, Tashigi said, bowing slightly to Luffy despite the shocked looks of the other Marines. Geez, no need to bow. I didn't do it for thanks. I did it cause he attacked my friend ... and then I kicked his ass cause he threatened my daughter and my soon-to-be wife, Luffy said, waving off the thanks and pulling Tashigi back upright as Crocodile came around and glared at Luffy. You little shit. I'm going to. Crocodile froze when Luffy glared at him with a single eye, the other shadowed by his hat and his smile no longer on his face. You're going to do what? Please ... give me a reason to beat you to a pulp. I'd have already done it by now, but I don't hit unconscious people. And the only reason you're still breathing right now is because my wife threatened me with the couch if I traumatized our daughter, Luffy said, coldly, causing Crocodile to turn red with rage while a few men in both the armies and Marines looked sympathetic at being threatened with the couch. That little freak child and her whore of a mo. Crocodile tried to get to Luffy one last time by insulting his 2 most precious women in the world at the moment. Luffy's arm stretched out and slammed Crocodile in the face with a nasty bone-breaking right hook. I think you broke his jaw, Tashigi said, looking mildly impressed as Crocodile spat blood and a tooth or 2 onto the ground and making Luffy look at her. Is that a problem? He asked the Marine woman, who smirked slightly and looked at her subordinates. Problem? What problem? I didn't see anything. What about you guys? Tashigi asked, making the men snicker slightly and smirk. If Crocodile had said something about their families like that, they probably would have reacted worse than Straw Hat did. See what, Lieutenant? Crocodile's jaw was broken when we got here, one of the Marines asked, making the others nod in agreement, which had Luffy smiling. Oh, and if you guys want to piss him off or drive him nuts on the boat ride to hell, I have the perfect thing, Luffy said, grinning wickedly at the Marines and causing Tashigi to look at him curiously, but slowly grin as well. Oh, do share. We might need to keep him on a leash, Tashigi said, making Luffy look at her and snort slightly before looking at the Marines. Is she that kinky with all the prisoners, or is he a special case? Luffy asked, causing most of the Marines to burst out laughing, along with Robin and quite a few soldiers. Tashigi blushed brightly and stuttered rapidly before she mimed strangling Luffy. That's not what I meant. Tashigi screamed at him, causing him to laugh for the first time since he beat up Crocodile. I know, calm down. It was just a joke, Luffy said, grinning as he tried to placate the woman who glared at him. As for how to annoy him, Luffy grinned wickedly as he looked straight at Crocodile and opened his mouth. At first everyone face planted at hearing Luffy sing, then they heard the lyrics and the Marines were all grinning wickedly. Oh, they were definitely spreading this around. Never smile at a crocodile. No, you can't get friendly with a crocodile. You think that everything the Marines and government do is right? Luffy asked, glaring darkly at Tashigi, who was talking to him about the apprehended billions of Baroque works. Smoker, you and your lieutenant with me now. Luffy snarled as he turned to look at the captain, who glared at him but puffed his cigars and walked over with a slightly surprised, slightly scared Tashigi following him. The rest of the Straw Hats were with Makino in the palace getting treated for any injuries, but Robin was standing beside her husband and glaring darkly at the Marine swordswoman. She was barely refraining herself from snapping the woman's neck. King-san, I'm going to the facility now, and I'll be dragging these two with me with your permission, Luffy said, looking at Cobra, who was nearby and having shook his head at the Marine woman's naivety. He thought a lieutenant would have more common sense than to see the world in black and white. Of course, Luffy-kun. If you want some of my soldiers to go with you, just say the word. Cobra agreed, making the two present Marines look at the king, surprised for agreeing so readily. No thank you, sir. I wouldn't be able to guarantee their safety. She can hold her own against a mere pirate like me, and if not, then she'll have Smokey there to help her, Luffy said, nodding towards Tashigi with a slightly mocking tint to his voice. Where are we going, Straw Hat? Smoker demanded, narrowing his eyes at the pirate captain, who glared into the distance. In the same direction Cobra told him the facility was in. A government facility. Robin and we got some disturbing and sad news about one of them. When King Oji-san said there was one here, he gave us permission to investigate and tear it down, especially if they're doing the same thing here that they had done at the other one, Luffy said, clenching his fists and making Robin look away to avoid their eyes when they looked at her. Trust me, this will shake your worldviews if you truly think that all Marines and governments are in the right, Cobra said, not really minding the term of address from the hero of Alabasta as he was being called, much to his disagreement and his wife's slight amusement. A facility, huh? This is the first I'm hearing of them, and I don't have a good feeling about this. Let's go, Straw Hat, Tashigi, Smoker said, having his jut handy just in case and not looking pleased. This building, most Marine or government buildings make me feel safe, and yet this one, Tashigi murmured, staring at the building they had stopped at a few miles away from the palace. No guards, Robin? Luffy asked his wife, causing her to nod and bloom eyes all over the building, blooming more and more as her visual range increased. This building is either just starting up or getting ready to be moved. There's only a handful of scientists and 2 guards. They have a pink-haired woman hostage, and Luffy, there's another one. Newborn little boy, Robin said, her eyes snapping open and filling with tears as she stared at the building, making Luffy's face become thunderous. They made another child to be a weapon? Another one of his children? Then why are we still standing out here? Luffy said, not asked, as he walked forward and kicked the doors down. Robin, guards, Luffy ordered, snapping his wife back to reality and making her nod as she bloomed multiple hands to twist the back and neck of the guards. You guys made a big mistake, Luffy growled as he entered the room that the woman, crying baby, and scientists were in with the 2 down guards. Who are you? One scientist asked, nervously reaching for a gun and making Luffy's eyes hone in on him. Monkey D. Luffy, Luffy said simply, and making the scientists pale while the pink-haired woman looked shocked. The baby, you're the one whose DNA they've been using for the father, the pink-haired woman said, making Luffy look at her and nod. Robin, grab our son and find out why they had the woman prisoner, Luffy ordered his wife as he glared down the scientists, who turned really pale at that as Robin rushed towards the cradle near the pink-haired woman and picked up the crying baby. SHH. It's okay, baby boy. It's all right, Mama's here now, Robin said, tears in her eyes as she soothed her son, who slowly calmed down and looked up at her with piercing blue eyes. Nico, Robin, the one whose eggs they stole and were using to make the baby, the pink-haired woman said, looking at Robin, who looked up from her son and at her. Who are you and why are you in here? Robin asked, ignoring the sounds of her husband and Smoker knocking out the scientists behind her. Luffy would have probably done worse, but Smoker and Tashigi were here, so he had to hold back a lot. Name's Jewelry Bonnie. I was starting my journey as a pirate when these bozos grabbed me for my ability. I can manipulate ages. They made me age up some guys, his spunk, so they could use it to make kids, and then had me age up the kids to trainable levels. If I failed to comply, not only would I die, but they'd go after my village back home, Bonnie said, making Robin stare at her for a moment before nodding as well. We have a little girl, a survivor of these experiments, back at the palace. I managed to save her before they killed her, but didn't know she was my daughter until recently, along with triplets that Robin looked close to tears again, so she focused her attention on her giggling son, so brightly smiling even with being in this place. Truly he had his father's smile. The little hypnotist is still alive. Is she all right? Can I see her? God, the girl's only 2 years old, but she should look about 10. Bonnie asked, looking up sharply and making Robin look at her and nod. No, this can't be true. This has to be a trick. The Marines wouldn't. They wouldn't. Robin turned to stare coldly at Tashigi, who was reading over the reports of this facility. And the one Robin knew about. The one that killed her triplets. They wouldn't what? Make human weapons to point at their enemies. They wouldn't slaughter innocent children because they couldn't control them. Grow the hell up. You're an adult, not a stupid child. You say pirates are wrong and cruel, and yes, most are, but so are the Marines and the government, Luffy said sharply as he ignored Tashigi, walking over to stand by Robin and wrap his arms around her. The Marines and government aren't always about justice, and if they are, then there is something seriously wrong with this one. Look at me, Tashigi-san, Robin said, her voice stern and cold as she turned to glare at Tashigi. Her son in her arms and her wrapped in her husband's. Robin waited until Tashigi finally looked up at her with a face filled of shock and disbelief and horror. You look at me and you see a pirate, a woman who's been forced to survive in a world that wants nothing more than for her to die since the age of 8. You see the demon of Ohara and the devil's child. Guess what? Robin asked, glaring at the woman while Bonnie gaped in disbelief at the woman standing in front of her. I'm more than that. I'm a woman who's going to be married to the man who's holding me, the man who saved my life twice when I just wanted to die. I'm a mother to a little girl that's 2 years old, and yet she looks and acts like she's 9 because of a facility like this one. I'm a mother who didn't even know that little girl was her daughter until Crocodile told me and mentioned that he was going to kill her. I'm a mother that never knew she was a mother, Robin said, her eyes filling with tears as she looked down at her son in her arms. They would have to name him. What would they name him? They hadn't talked about names for a son yet, only for the daughter they knew was in her womb. I'm a mother of 5 children. Children I never knew were born until long after 3 of them were killed. I managed to save 1, and then I found out about this place and found out about the 5th child. Children I never knew about, Robin said, staring up at Tashigi, who had her hands over her mouth while Smoker just closed his eyes with a heavy sigh. He'd been a Marine for so long he'd seen his side become the villains. Luffy just held Robin and their son close while Bonnie had her eyes closed and looked guilty for her part in this whole thing. Robin's next words were yelled, scaring her son into crying again, which made Robin break down in sobs of her own. Where's the justice in killing 3 innocent children whose parents never knew about them? Where's the justice in my children being slaughtered? 2 days later, and Robin was walking down the aisle, looking sad when she noticed the empty spaces where her 3 children would have been, but smiling when she saw Makino there in her purple dress and wearing her father's straw hat with a bright grin on her face. She smiled a little wider when she saw her son being cradled protectively in Bonnie's arms. The pink-haired woman hadn't answered Luffy's question on joining her crew, but she felt responsible for Makino and the still unnamed baby boy, so she'd stay for a little while and watch after them. Even Smoker and Tashigi were in attendance, Luffy having invited them and gave them a recording Den Mushi to give the video to his grandparents later. Wow, if I didn't know better, I'd think you were a goddess, Luffy muttered, staring wide-eyed at his wife. In the last life, her dress had been a basic white one with a veil and small train with no jewelry, since Alabasta still had some hard feelings for her part in Baroque works. In this life, where she had actively helped take down the corrupt organization, they didn't let her get away with a basic dress. No, she was wearing a custom-made and tailored deep purple wedding dress with a matching veil and no train this time, and was decorated with some of Vivi's own jewelry. We both know I'm far from a goddess, more of a demoness, Robin said, smiling and trying to fight back her tears. She was happy to finally be getting to call him her husband in the open again. But there were 3 more people at the least that should be there. Well, if you're a demoness, I must be a demon. Luffy grinned widely at her, although she could see the tint of sadness to it as well. He knew that there was a big hole missing. A hole big enough for 3 beautiful little children that should have been there. Well, this is the weirdest wedding I've ever been part of, but there's no doubt you 2 love each other, so if you'd like to get on with the vows, Luffy, do you wish to go first? The king said, sweat dropping at what the 2 had said, much to everyone else's disbelief and slight amusement. Sure, Robin, for as long as I can remember, I've been focused on being the pirate king, wanting to be the freest man in the world. I've heard being married took away some of your freedom, so when I was little I thought I'd never want to get married cause I didn't want to give up my freedom, but Luffy paused and gave his signature grin to Robin, who was surprised. They hadn't done vows last time, so this was a bit of a surprise to her. If it's you, I don't mind being married or giving up my freedom. You, Makino, our son, our family, you all are more important to me than my dream, than my freedom. I could go on about how I promise you lots of treasure, but you're not interested in that kind of thing, and Nami would probably steal it. Oi, Nami shouted, making the pirates in the room laugh, including a very teary-eyed Robin. I could promise to always protect you, and I'll do my best to do so, but I know you're not a damsel in distress and would hate if I treated you like that. You've been kicking ass for 20 years after all. Luffy gave her a grin and making her snort slightly. More breaking the spines than kicking, but same principle. Robin said, although she was still smiling tearfully even as everyone looked a bit freaked out. I could promise you all that, but I know you aren't interested in those kinds of promises, so what I will promise is that I'll always love and cherish you. You don't need my protection, but if someone hurts you, I'll crush them. And if someone hurts our family, I'll destroy them. That's the promise I'll make to you, my future pirate queen. Luffy said, making Robin laugh a little at the title he gave her. Well, that was an unusual vow, Robin. Cobra asked, sweat dropping and looking a bit pale as he looked at the woman who admitted to breaking people's spines for 20 years. Luffy, for most of my life I've been told that I don't deserve to exist, don't deserve to live, and for a long time I believed those words. I believed that I should have never been born or survived the destruction of my home island. Robin looked down and bit her lip before looking back up at Luffy and smiling happily, even though quite a few people looked shocked at what she had said. But you, even when I only wanted to die, you made me keep living. I resented you for a while for that after you saved me the first time, but then you reminded me of how much fun it is to be alive. You showed me how I had been merely surviving and never truly living, and I loved every second of it. Then when I tried to die a second time to protect, you fought for me and made me keep living. Robin said, tears able to be seen as they fell down her cheeks past her veil. You showed me how it felt to be more than just a woman on the run, a woman hated by the world. You let me know what it felt like to be in love for the first time, and you let me know how it felt to be loved in a world that hates me. I could promise to always be by your side, supporting your decisions and going along with them, but here Robin chuckled a bit. Let's admit it, dear. You have some really stupid ideas sometimes, but that's okay. I like that about you. You follow your heart more than your head, and that's what I love about you. Well, one of the things. Even if something is so stupid people believe you're an idiot, you always do the right thing and follow your heart and instincts. I can't promise not to call you out on the really stupid ones that could endanger our family, but I can promise to always listen to you. I'll listen to your ideas, your dreams and plans. I'll listen and help make it so that they aren't too dangerous. I could promise you that we'll live together for years and have the largest family in the world. But here Robin gave a small giggle again as she glanced to her 2 children in the empty spot where 3 should be. We're pirates. Tomorrow is never a guarantee, so I can't promise you years. As for the family bit, well, I do want a large family. Have you heard of how many kids some people have? I love you and I'll love our children, but we aren't having 20+ kids. My body might not survive. Robin joked, making Luffy look at her horrified, while a few others sweat dropped or just stared in disbelief. What I can promise is that I'll stay with you until the day I die. I can promise that our children will never question if they should be alive or not, or whether or not they are loved. I can promise that if I'm still alive when you become Pirate King, then I'll definitely be deserving of the title Pirate Queen, because you deserve only the best, and if that's what it takes, then that's what I'll be. I'll be the most dangerous woman in the world for you. Robin said, smiling brightly at her husband, who grinned widely at her and reached forward to wipe her tears. Okay, I could do the whole in sickness and in health thing, but after those vows I don't think it's necessary. Nor is it really necessary to ask if you'll take each other as your significant other, Cobra said, sweat dropping. This was certainly going to be the most remembered and talked about wedding in Alabasta for a long time. So just kiss each other, will you? Cobra asked, more than said, making Luffy grin widely as he uncovered Robin's face and gently cupped her cheeks, wiping away the tears with his thumbs. Sounds like the best plan I've heard all day, King Oji-san. Luffy quipped before leaning up and pressing his lips to Robin's as she threw her arms around him. May I introduce you to Mr. Monkey D. Luffy and Mrs. Monkey Robin? The king announced as the couple separated for air, making a few people chuckle slightly at Robin's new name. Monkey Robin sounds nice, but we really didn't think about that, did we? Luffy asked, causing Robin to smile at him and chuckle slightly. Her words causing quite a few people to laugh, especially the crew. I already said thinking ahead isn't your strong suit. Don't hurt yourself, dear. Just leave the thinking to me. Garp, Sengoku yelled, causing his wall to have a brand new hole in it as his friend rushed through to answer the call. What is it, Sengoku? Garp asked, looking at the man with the seagull hat, while Tsuru just sipped her tea on the couch nearby, smirking behind her cup. Your damn grandson, that's what. Sengoku yelled, making Garp blink and take a seat by his wife. Which one? Garp asked, causing Sengoku to scowl. Your youngest. The fleet admiral answered as the admirals began wandering over thanks to the commotion. Luffy, what's he done now? Garp asked, grinning and relaxing as he threw an arm behind Tsuru to wrap around her possessively. Not only is he a notorious pirate with training in haki and most marine techniques. Here Sengoku shot Garp a glare, making him grin sheepishly. I thought showing him how cool Marines were would make him decide not to be a pirate, Garp said sheepishly, and earning a snort from his wife. To be fair, he has helped us a great deal with the corruption in the East Blue Branch. Tsuru piped up calmly and making Sengoku nod at her. That's the only reason his bounty wasn't hired to start with. He's also managed to dethrone the king of Drum Island, Sengoku said, making Garp laugh a bit. Yeah, he never did like authority figures. Besides, wasn't that king an asshole who took away all but one of the doctors from his people and then abandoned them to pirates? Garp asked, making Sengoku pause and frown. Yes, but that isn't the point. Not only did he do that, but then he went to Alabasta. From the reports, completely obliterated Crocodile in a fight, Sengoku said, causing the admirals to pause for a moment and look at each other while Garp and Tsuru shrugged. Good for him, Crocodile always was an ass, Garp said, waving it off while Tsuru smirked. I wouldn't have said it in such a way, but Garp is right. Tsuru agreed, making Sengoku develop a tick mark on his forehead. Then if that wasn't enough, he found the Alabasta testing facility and completely destroyed it with the king's permission and blessing, Sengoku said, making Tsuru and Garp both frown slightly. I don't like those facilities. They're run by the world government and we have no knowledge of what goes on inside. Tsuru said, her frown more pronounced than ever. Oh, that's just it. Somehow the knowledge of what goes on in those facilities was leaked to the press. And I'm 80% sure your grandson had something to do with that, Sengoku said, making the two lean forward eagerly while the admirals finally entered the room. I've already read the reports on that and you two aren't reading them until I'm done about your grandson, Sengoku said, giving them both a firm look before then moving on to the recording Den Mushi on his desk. Your grandson also was married by the king of Alabasta to Devil's Child. He sent a video of it via Smoker, Sengoku said, holding up the mushi and making the grandparents freeze in place before Garp launched forward and snatched up the snail with gentle fingers. Husen rushed over as well with wide eyes, wondering if that was a prank, only to see the wedding himself and look shocked at how much Robin had grown. Garp and Tsuru laughed fondly at the vows, while Sengoku snorted and remarked how much the young couple reflected the older one. Finally, after they had kissed and made the remarks about Robin's name, the two of them shared the first dance before approaching the mushi with a baby in Robin's arms and a cute little girl wearing a purple dress and Luffy's signature hat holding Luffy's hand. Hey Ba-chan, Gigi, Seagull-san, and whoever else they show this to. My name's Monkey D. Luffy and I'm the luckiest and happiest man in the world right now. Ba-chan, Gigi, I'd like to introduce you to my beautiful bride Robin. Ba-chan's already met her but Gigi hasn't, and behind us is our crew, our nakama. Luffy spoke to the mushi while Robin giggled a bit, looking almost deliriously happy with a smile that would rival Luffy's. Behind them was the rest of the Straw Hats so far gathered, all smiling slightly or waving towards the camera. She looks so happy, so much like Liv, Cusin murmured to himself as he stared at the blue-eyed bombshell. Hello Garp-san, or would he prefer it if I called him Gigi as well? Robin asked, directing the question to her husband, who snorted slightly. Gigi would love having a granddaughter to spoil. He won't mind you calling him Gigi, Luffy said, causing Garp to nod in agreement with a wide grin on his face. I'd insist, Garp said proudly, making Tsuru smile up at him fondly. Her husband was an overgrown child, but he was incredibly sweet when he wanted to be. Well, Gigi, Tsuru Ba-chan, and whoever it is my husband calls Seagull-san. Robin trailed off, giving her husband a look while he snorted slightly and snickered. He had given Sengoku that nickname the first time he met the man and it never got old. That would be Gigi's and Ba-chan's friend, the guy with the cool seagull hat, Luffy said, making Robin blink before sighing with a fond smile. Only you would call the fleet admiral something like that, dear, Robin said, making Luffy grin down at the baby and young girl. Now you'll call him that too, won't you, Makino-chan? Gigi said he was like his brother, and Ba-chan admitted Oz-san was her brother figure. That makes him like my uncle or something, so he'd be your uncle too, Luffy asked the little girl, making Robin shake her head with a smile on her face as Makino grinned widely from under the brim of the hat. Okay, daddy, Makino agreed while Garp choked on a rice cracker. Tsuru's tea went down the wrong windpipe, Sengoku's jaw dropped open, and Cusin was rather ironically frozen in place at what she had called him. You're corrupting our children already, dear, Robin said, more amused than anything while Luffy grinned at her. That's my job. I'm the dad. I protect them and play with them and stuff like that. You're the good example. You teach them to be smart and polite and not curse like a mountain bandit, Luffy said, grinning and making Robin's eyebrow twitch slightly. I still want to know how he thought having you be raised by mountain bandits would make you become a marine, Robin said, causing Tsuru to nod in agreement as she pulled herself together. Anyways, Gigi, Ba-chan, Seagull-san, I wanted to introduce you to my lovely wife and our children. My beautiful baby girl here is Makino. Monkey Clover Makino, say hi, sweetheart, Luffy said, prompting the little girl in the hat, making her grin widely and wave cutely at the camera. Hi Ba-chan, Gigi, Seagull-san, Makino said, making Luffy laugh while Robin sighed in what seemed like fondness. She's adorable, Tsuru said, her heart melting slightly at the sight of her first great-grandchild. This cute little guy here is Monkey D. Saul and Smoker. If those cigars come anywhere near my children, especially Saul, I will happily rip them from your mouth and shove them up your anal cavity, Robin said, smiling lovingly down at the baby boy in her arms before glaring sharply at the camera, presumably at Smoker, who was holding the mushi. What's an anal cavity? Is that like when Daddy threatened to shove Crocodile's hook up his ass? Makino asked, looking up at Robin, who gave Luffy a glare for that comment, making him give a sheepish grin. Robin growled at her new husband, who gave a small shrug of his shoulders. Makino-chan, remember not to say things like that. Those are adult words, and I was raised by mountain bandits. Anything you hear me say you should probably ignore or never repeat, okay? Luffy asked, kneeling down to be on eye level with Makino, who covered her mouth with her hands while Robin's eyes softened as Makino nodded rapidly. It doesn't really surprise me, but it's still quite heartwarming to see you interacting with our children, Robin said, smiling slightly as Luffy picked up the hat just enough to ruffle Makino's hair and then put it back down on her head. Why is your heart warming up? Isn't that like really bad for your health? Am I doing this wrong? Crap, I don't know how to be a dad, Luffy asked, his eyes widening, scared he had screwed up and making Robin giggle as she kissed his cheek. No dear, you're a wonderful father, it's a good thing. It just means I'm falling in love with you even more, Robin said, smiling at her husband, who paused and then grinned at her. You had me worried there for a second, Robin. Don't scare me like that. Luffy whined slightly at her, making Makino giggle even as little Sol gave a gurgle-like laugh. And no complaints, cause Sol is an awesome name and all, but I thought we were naming him Sabo, Luffy asked, causing a pang to go through Garp's heart as he recalled the little blonde-haired top-hat-wearing brat. We'll name our next baby boy Sabo, okay? After all, we are planning on a big family, Robin said, kissing Luffy's cheek again and making him nod and smile in agreement. Anyways, Jiji, Ba-chan, Ah-sen just wanted to introduce you to our little family, but don't worry. There's going to be more monkeys in the future. Like Robin said, we're planning on a big family. Hey Smokey, put out those cigars and come get in the shot with us, Luffy called, making Smoker curse and the camera to shake as he tried to get away. Come on Smokey, Ah-san. Makino cheered as the camera and curses seemed to fly before suddenly someone else held it, as a grinning pink-haired woman had Smoker in a chokehold with his own jut pointing into his side, and Makino latched onto his leg. How the hell did I get dragged into this? Smoker asked, only to swear when a hand bloomed from his should and slapped him upside the head. Watch your language around the children, Smoker-san, Robin chastised, earning a glare from the Marine while Luffy just laughed. Come on Smokey. He videotaped the wedding for us and helped us take down that facility that was holding Bonnie prisoner along with little Sol. Besides, Makino is calling you her uncle already, so get used to it, Luffy said, laughing as he slapped Smoker on the back, the crew laughing in the background and Bonnie snickering from where she was holding Smoker still. Hopefully we'll see you soon, Jiji, Ba-chan, Ah-sen, but without the whole ... arresting us thing. That would really suck, Luffy said, grinning at the camera as he lifted Makino onto his shoulders and wrapped one arm around Robin's waist. The video was cut off to the sound of everyone, even Makino and Smoker, snorting at Luffy's words and Robin's rather dirty remark that earned a loud laugh from Bonnie. And I'm the only one allowed to do that in regards to Luffy. Sure you don't want to join us, Bonnie? We'd love having you along, Luffy asked, looking at Bonnie, who smiled slightly and shook her head in the negative as she got ready to sail off with the supply ship Alabasta was sending to North Blue. It was 2 days after the wedding and Luffy and Robin just got back from their short honeymoon, not wanting to be away from their children for very long. There had been something in the news yesterday about several facilities being raided by Marines thanks to the report of what happened in the ones Robin and Luffy knew of. And it seemed like Tsuru and Garp had a hell of a grudge against them. Usually Tsuru was the laid-back tactician, and yet she had been the first one in the door of the facilities, taking down whoever was in her path, which proved why exactly she had ended up married to Gar. Thankfully, it seemed like the other facilities were waiting for their turn to have Bonnie around for her powers to help speed up development, and therefore there weren't any other surprise children found by the Marines, which was rather good since Robin didn't want to know what the Marines would do if they found a child of the feared Devil's Child. Nah, you guys are great and I'm real glad I got to meet the parents of those cute kids, but I'm not much of a follower. I'm going to be a captain as soon as I gather my crew, and then me and you will be racing for the title of Pirate King, huh? Bonnie asked, smirking and making Luffy grin at her. That's a race I plan to win, Luffy said, causing Robin to giggle as he held his hand out for a high five. Bonnie grinned back and slapped his hand with her own. We'll see, but here, it's the number for the Den Den Mushy that your princess friend gave me. As soon as I start up my crew officially, I'll give you a call to see if we can set up an alliance. That way, if you'll need some help, I have a good excuse to come over, or just so I could come and steal the kids for a little while, Bonnie said, smiling down at Makino, who was attached to her hip in a last long-standing hug. Just give me a call and I'll set up the alliance, no problem. Well, I'll agree to it. Robin will be the one looking over the terms and all. She's smarter than I am with that kind of thing, Luffy said, grinning at his wife, who rolled her eyes but smiled fondly as she cradled Sol in her arms. It takes a big man to admit that he's not good at something. It takes a great captain to admit that one of his crew is smarter than him. I look forward to the day I get to alliance myself with you, Monkey D. Luffy, Bonnie said seriously and making Luffy grin at her now. Can't wait to be allies with you either, Bonnie. Have fun out there and get a strong crew. One day we might have to duke it out for the title of Pirate King, and I wouldn't want it to be an easy fight. Luffy grinned wider, his cheeks stretching thanks to his power. I could say the same to you, but I've seen you in action. Are you guys sure you don't want me to age you up a bit before I leave? I don't mind, Bonnie asked, frowning at them as she offered that one last time. No thank you. I like being the age I am right now. I get much older and I don't think many would accept that I'm Luffy's wife and not his mother, Robin said, smiling slightly sardonically as she once again recalled the age difference between her and her husband. She was 11 years older than him. It wasn't the biggest age gap she's ever heard of before, but still and I would just like to point out right here that this is true and I have no problems with the 11-year age gap between Robin and Luffy. My parents were born 16 years apart and yet they're married, so for everyone making remarks in the PMs about me supporting a pair with such a large age gap, you obviously haven't read my other stories and I really don't see anything wrong with an 11-year difference in their ages. I'm kinda curious what I'd look like in a few years, but on it. Bonnie grinned as she didn't let Luffy finish, working her powers and aging him up by about 5 years. Now instead of 17 he was 22 and boy did it show. He had shot up nearly 2 feet in height, now being close to 7 feet and standing a few inches taller than Robin. And his normally scrawny lanky frame had developed some rather prominent muscles. He wasn't as muscled as Zoro, and he never would be thanks to his rubber powers, but he was definitely toned enough to catch most people's eyes and show a decent amount of strength. His hair had grown even messier, giving it a bit of a wild mane feeling to it, and his scars had darkened slightly against his skin, which made the burnt X mark on his chest stand out and give him a dangerous look. I was going to say that I could wait until I grew naturally. Luffy's voice was a bit deeper, not a baritone but not as high as it had been either. Puberty, no matter how late it had seemed to have hit the rubber boy, was very kind to the straw hat boy. While Nami was gaping in disbelief, her jaw on the ground, Vivi was bright red in the face as she stared at Luffy with wide eyes. Bonnie was wide-eyed and drooling slightly as she stared at those muscles. Robin just licked her lips as her eyes roved her husband's older frame. I love you no matter what age you look, dear, but I just have to say yummy, Robin said, making Luffy grin at her with a small blush on his cheeks. If you like it so much I might just stay this age, Luffy said, making Robin eye him over eagerly and lick her lips again. Bonnie looked insanely jealous as Robin stared at Luffy but directed the question to her. Bonnie, do you mind staying a little longer and watching the kids? I think we cut our honeymoon a little too short. It was almost a month later, and the crew were heading towards Mock Town and Jaya when Robin approached Chopper in the infirmary with Saul cradled protectively in her arms where he usually was. Oh, don't get her wrong. Luffy and the rest of the crew took turns holding him, and he had several playpens scattered around the ship to sit and play in, but she preferred to hold him herself. Chopper-kun, Robin said, smiling as she drew the tiny doctor's attention with a hug from several extra arms. She couldn't help it. Her motherly instincts were on high, and despite knowing that he was older than Makino, he was still so small she just had to smother him in hugs and affection. It didn't seem that he minded much, just got embarrassed and happy. Hi Robin, is something wrong? Is Saul sick? Chopper asked, turning into his heavy point to look at the baby boy who giggled up at him unafraid. Chopper didn't know if he got that from Robin or from Luffy, but Robin swears up and down it was Luffy's genetics that made him unafraid of the large doctor. No, nothing like that. I just thought I should let you know that. Well, you know about my paused pregnancy, correct? Robin asked, smiling at the doctor, who nodded as he switched back into his tiny form and peered up at her. Yeah, do you have any clue when you're going to resume the pregnancy? Doctrine made sure there were several books on pregnancy and child delivery and care for me to add to the library, so I'll be ready whenever you are, Chopper said, smiling up at Robin, who smiled warmly back down at him. I'm resuming the pregnancy right now, Chopper. The pregnancy has been resumed for the last 2 hours. I've just spent most of the time getting past the nausea and morning sickness. I just wanted to let you know in case you had to prepare anything, Robin said, giggling when Chopper's eyes went wide and he stared at her stomach. The baby won't be kicking for a while, and there's not a bump yet, but you can try to feel for the baby if you want. Robin giggled when Chopper immediately pressed his ear to her stomach and listened closely as Robin patted his head fondly. I can almost hear the heartbeat. Let me get my stethoscope, Chopper said, running to get the instrument with a wide grin on his face. Returning and pressing the instrument to her belly, Chopper's eyes went wide with awe as he stared at the, for now, flat belly, making Robin giggle at his reaction. Do you want to come with me to tell Luffy about the pregnancy? I'm willing to bet he'll be swinging me around or possibly fainting, and I need someone to hold the recording mushie, Robin asked, a spare hand holding up one of the mushie the king had given them. He had given them a recording mushie, a baby mushie, and a full-grown mushie. Apparently they were a set, a family. Sure, Chopper agreed, holding the mushie and following behind Robin with a wide grin on his face. His nakama were so kind, and Robin and Luffy treated him as if he were their child too. He missed the doctrine, but he loved it here. Turn it on now, Dr. Kun, Robin ordered softly as she gently settled Saul into the playpen that was nailed down to the deck and the wall so that it didn't move as she walked out onto the deck where Luffy was sitting on the figurehead of the ship with Makino next to him. Luffy, Robin called, rushing towards the figurehead, causing the rubber man to look at her and walk over quickly with Makino cradled in his arms until they reached the deck. Everyone looked up from what they were doing in order to look and see why the archaeologist and spy of the ship was calling for her husband and rushing about. She never rushed unless it was important. Robin Luffy was cut off when Robin waited until Makino was set down before she tackled him to the deck and kissed him hard, making Sanji go all depressed again while Zoro rolled his eyes and the others blushed. Luffy and Robin seemed to choke slightly as she remembered how happy she was to know a little life was growing inside of her. With her pregnancy paused, she had sometimes forgotten she had been pregnant at all, and yet with it resumed feeling the nausea, experiencing the morning sickness, and knowing with certain clarity it was because of the baby within her. Robin, Luffy questioned, confused at how she was acting as he stood back up, pulling her up too and making Robin give a large, happy and beautiful smile as she grabbed his hands. The others looked at her shocked, and even Zoro blushed a bit at how the warm, happy smile made her look when she wasn't giving a morbid comment at the same time. Luffy and Robin choked a bit as she guided his hands towards her stomach and stared deep into his eyes, seeing the concern and question in them as the aged-up man looked down into her eyes. "I'm pregnant, Luffy," Robin finally said, making Luffy blink for a second as he stared at her. Sure, he was expecting her to resume the baby's growth, but he hadn't expected it this soon. "Pregnant," he echoed numbly as he stared at her with his eyes slowly widening. All around the deck, everyone was frozen for all of 2 minutes before the Mikan fell out of Nami's hands and rolled into the sea with a small, barely audible plop. "He got her pregnant?" Nami questioned, wide-eyed and gaping. Robin Chwan. Sanji sobbed out, depressed. He knew she belonged to Luffy and that they had most likely done it on their honeymoon, but now there would be undeniable proof of it. Proof of how she belonged to Luffy and Luffy alone. To better train harder. Zoro grunted, although he smiled a bit, happy for his captain. He saw it as his sworn duty to protect both his captain and his captain's dreams, and his family. That family included Makino, who was able to take down quite a few people on her own with her hypnosis ability, but still the girl was a kid. Saul, who wasn't able to do anything on his own yet nor old enough to start training, and therefore was the most vulnerable member of the family. And Robin, who was usually not needing his protection given her ability and training with it, but was also now more vulnerable than Makino and almost as vulnerable as Saul. Now he had to help protect the pregnant woman and the baby when it was born. He'd better find bigger weights and fast. Usopp was unable to say anything as his mouth dropped open and emitted a tiny, slightly high-pitched shocked sound that wouldn't be able to be turned into words at all. His mind was frozen and he couldn't think up a single story to tell. "What's pregnant mean?" Makino questioned curiously and confused as she stared at her family and their reactions. "Pregnant, we're going to have another baby. We're going to have another baby." Luffy's grin was ready to split his face as he finally snapped out of his stupor, picking Robin up and swinging her around for a moment before setting her down and kneeling in front of her as she giggled a bit. "Hey there, little one. I'm your daddy. I can't wait to meet you and for you to meet your big brother Saul and big sister Makino." Luffy spoke gently as he stared at Robin's exposed stomach, making Robin giggle with tears in her eyes. She knew he'd be happy, but she forgot just how sweet he had been when they had learned of the baby to begin with. "Mama's having a baby. I'm getting another sibling," Makino asked, wide-eyed at her dad's words and making Robin look at her daughter and nod. "Yeah, you hear that, Saul? You get to be a big brother now." Makino cheered as she looked at her baby brother who was laying in the playpen gumming on a blanket. The baby gurgled and giggled as if he understood her and was just as happy. Robin felt tears slip down her cheeks as her family, part of it at least, surrounded her. They still needed to get Frankie and Brooke, and then they'd go and get Jim during the war. But for now, everyone was surrounding her and giving their congratulations in their own special ways. Nami gave her a Mikan and guided her towards the lounge chair. Usopp started spouting off tales of him raising 500 children from infanthood. Sanji was already offering her baby healthy shakes and smoothies. Makino was talking rapidly to her mother's stomach. Saul was gurgling and giggling happily as Robin used her fruit to move her son from the playpen to the lounge chair back into her arms. And Zoro was smirking slightly as he stood a little to the side of her with one hand on his sword. She could tell by his stance that he was keeping an eye out for anyone looking to hurt his captain's wife and unborn child. He had been one of the most protective of her in the last timeline after they had learned of the pregnancy. The only ones as protective of her as he had been were Chopper, Frankie, Brooke, and Luffy. The others were at much tamer levels of protectiveness. As for Luffy, well, he was sitting behind her on the lounge chair grinning like an idiot with his chin on her head as she leaned back into him, his hands and arms wrapped around her midsection protectively several times over. Chopper giggled happily as he took the recording from the mushy and attached it to a bird that was flying nearby and he had talked to. He sent the recording to Garp and Tsuru before rushing over and climbing up onto the lounge chair to cuddle with Robin and Saul. He wondered how the Marines would react to this, but he didn't really care much about it. He was more focused on the party going on to celebrate the new crew member on the way. Right now it was about a week after Robin announced her pregnancy, and Luffy and Zoro were sitting in a certain bar on Jaya in Mock Town having just got done speaking with Blackbeard, or Marshal D. Teach as he introduced himself. Robin had taken Makino and Sol and went to another part of the town to pick up something, Luffy giving her permission to snap spines and necks if anyone attacked her or their children. He wasn't overly worried. Robin and Makino could handle themselves, and he wasn't going to pick a fight with Blackbeard with his pregnant wife and small children on the same island. He wouldn't take the risk of Blackbeard or one of his crew getting in a lucky shot to his family. Besides, he'd sense any attacks on them and could be there in an instant to kill whoever tried. That and the fact that they were already heading in his direction. He didn't know what they had to buy, but apparently it didn't take them very long to find it. "Who are you and what are you doing sitting in my favorite bar drinking my favorite sake?" Bellamy arrogantly spoke up as he looked down at Zoro and Luffy, who blinked up at him for a moment. Luffy opened his mouth to answer, his eyes slightly narrowed dangerously as he remembered the arrogant blonde, but was stopped by the bar door opening again and a small blur racing over to him. The little blur dodged around a surprised Bellamy and threw itself right at Luffy, who smiled. "Easy there, princess. Where's the Marines?" Luffy asked, laughing as he caught the human missile named Makino in his arms. The girl's new sun hat perched on her head and matching her red t-shirt and blue jeans. That must have been what they had gone shopping for, seeing as how Makino loved wearing hats like his straw hat or even Robin's cowboy hat. "No Marines, Daddy. Mama and I found this sun hat for me and bought a present for you. Mama says you should have gotten one earlier, but since you didn't, she had to pick one out for you," Makino said, beaming up at her father and near shaking with energy, which was quite unlike his little girl. Sure, she was open to showing when she was happy and energetic and all, but she was like her mother in the fact that she preferred to be quiet and sneaky, although she preferred to paint, not read, like her mother. "Oh, and why are you shaking as if you've had too much sugar?" Luffy asked, completely ignoring Bellamy's crew, while Makino gave a toothy grin and proudly held up several wallets, causing Luffy to snicker. "Oh, so that's why he sensed them darting around several people without feeling threatened. We didn't want to ask Aunt Nami for any money, so Mama showed me how to pickpocket people. She says I'm really good at it, and with a little practice I might be as good as her and Aunt Nami," Makino said, proudly, making Zoro nearly choke on his drink. "Oh God, please not another Nami. Don't try and put me in debt, okay, squirt?" Zoro asked, looking at the girl who climbed up into her dad's lap and grinned at him. "Don't worry, Uncle Zoro. I won't charge you," Makino said cheekily, making Luffy laugh while a giggle was heard from the doorway. Everyone looked over, and most of the men in Bellamy's crew, Bellamy included, Wolf whistled and panted like cartoon characters at the sight of Robin wearing a modest purple dress as she leaned against the doorway with Sol in her arms like usual. After revealing the pregnancy, she had begun wearing more modest clothing again, although she did have some of her rather skimpy outfits that she was saving for her alone time with Luffy. Her favorite to wear was tank tops or some of Luffy's t-shirts and a knee-length skirt, but on occasion she wore dresses like now. "Perhaps I should stop letting Nami babysit the children," Robin said, amused, as she pushed off of the doorway and began walking over to her husband and daughter, a plastic bag on one arm. "Hello, gorgeous," one of Bellamy's men near the back whistled as Robin passed by them without giving them a second look. "Hey, beautiful, why don't you come over here?" another man called, making Robin smirk slightly as she looked at her husband, who narrowed his eyes at the men but didn't say anything. He trusted his wife, for that she was grateful, since most men would have gone into a possessive and jealous frenzy by now to silence the people trying to tempt their significant other away. Not interested in little boys pretending to play pirate. Besides, not only am I a married woman, but I'm also a mother. I doubt you'd want me, Robin said, brushing off their remarks easily as she walked over, closer to where Bellamy and Luffy and Zoro were. "Trust me, lady. We aren't playing pretend, and besides, even if you have kids and a husband, I bet I could show you a better time than any loser out there. I'm Bellamy the hyena, worth 55 million berries," Bellamy said, speaking cockily to Robin, who gave him a bored look in return as he stepped in front of her and leering at her. "Only 55. Talk about a low amount. Sorry, but I'm not into disappointments," Robin said, her voice just as polite as you please, as she stepped around him and right in front of Luffy. Zoro was snickering behind his tankard, and Luffy was trying his best not to laugh at the look on Bellamy's face, while Makino looked confused. "Look what Makino, Sol and I got for you, dear," Robin said, smiling as she offered Sol to her husband, causing him to take the baby that was gurgling happily and smiling up at his dad while Robin reached into the bag. "Every captain needs a captain coat, and since you didn't have one yet, we got one for you," Robin said, taking out a beautiful dark red coat with the straw hat symbol on it stitched in gold, and the hem was a deep royal purple. "Wow, this is beautiful. It only took you 20 minutes to have this made?" Luffy asked, wide-eyed as he looked at the beautiful coat, causing Robin to smile at him warmly. "I still have a few contacts and people who owed me favors around here. I cashed in one before we left Alabasta, and they got it done about a week ago. I just had to go pick it up," Robin said, glad that her contacts and those who owed her favors were the same in this world as it was in the other. She should have gotten Luffy a captain coat the first time around. "You're a captain. What's your bounty?" Bellamy demanded angrily as he glared at Luffy, who blinked slightly. 80 million last I checked, but it could have changed by now. "I don't know," Luffy said, making Bellamy falter just a bit before he regained his cocky attitude. 80 mil for a little family guy like you. The Marines must be going soft. I'll be a warlord in no time. Bellamy bragged, eyeing the woman who was placing the captain's coat around Luffy's shoulders and smiling when it fit perfectly as she took Saul back into her arms. I can hold him, you know. I'm not gonna drop him, and besides, I need to get used to holding babies, don't I? Luffy asked, pouting almost up at Robin, which looked rather funny on his grown and dangerous appearance. I know you won't, dear, and getting used to holding babies would be a good thing, but he's gonna be a mama's boy. I can tell you that already. Maybe the next one will be a daddy's girl like Makino. Robin asked, holding Saul in one arm and placing a hand over her stomach with a small giggle. You're barely a month along, Robin. What makes you think it's a girl? Zoro asked, looking at his captain's wife even though he was tense and keeping an eye on Bellamy. If that man made one move towards the pregnant woman or the children, he'd be cut down in an instant. Woman's intuition, Robin said, smirking slightly at the swordsman as Luffy wrapped his arms around her and pulled her over to him. Makino moved over to Zoro's lap, making the man look down at her in surprise so that Robin could sit on Luffy's. Makino would, like a little sister, wouldn't you, princess? Luffy asked, looking at his daughter, who slipped off of Zoro's lap and stood in front of her parents, putting a hand on her mama's stomach with a grin. Please, there are only 3 girls on the ship since Aunt Vivi left to take care of her country. Makino asked, making Luffy grin while Bellamy snarled a bit. I promise, babe. Whatever this loser has, I have better. So how about ditching this loser and coming with me? Bellamy asked, making Robin raise an eyebrow at him before moving and pinching her husband's cheek, stretching it beyond human limits. Whatever you have pales in comparison to his natural size, I'm sure. Even if it hadn't ... well, he's made of rubber. You wouldn't stand a chance, Robin said coolly, and making Bellamy blink a few times before his face set into shocked and angry scowl while the women in his crew blushed brightly at that. Not exactly what I need in my head, Robin. Zoro said, a slight blush on his cheeks as he tried to drown that mental image in alcohol. Zoro spat out his drink. Luffy nearly fell off his stool laughing, and Makino was confused at Robin's next amused words. I didn't know you swung your sword that way, swordsman-san. Does Cook-san know? Hey, old man Cricket, this journey to Sky Island, is it safe for kids, babies, and pregnant women? Luffy asked, frowning slightly as he thought of what the air pressure could do to Robin, Saul, and Makino. If you go by Norland's tale, then it should be. There were 2 babies and a pregnant woman on board his ship when he went to the sky. None of the babies were harmed by the journey, and the pregnant woman was fine, as was her baby when it was born, Cricket said, nodding to the young man, who let out a breath of relief at that. I didn't even think to ask. Thank you, Luffy, Robin said, her heart rate slowing down from where it had sped up at the question. She hadn't even thought about what the journey could do to her children, born and unborn alike. Don't worry, it's in the dad handbook, Luffy said with a grin, Makino riding on his shoulders with a giggle. And you're a great dad to our little ones, Robin said, cradling Saul close with a warm smile on her face. The rest of the crew either laughed a bit or mimed gagging at the mushiness between the two. Hey, old man Cricket, I'll beat up Bellamy and get your gold back. You just worry about getting our ship fixed up. Robin, you stay with the kids. Everyone else go grab that southbird, Luffy ordered, making everyone nod while Robin frowned. I can help, dear. I'm not far enough along for catching a bird to hurt the baby, Robin said, making Luffy smile at her and kiss her head, bending down to give Saul a kiss as well and then kneeling down to kiss Robin's stomach. Robin couldn't help but smile when Luffy kissed her stomach. He was so excited for this baby, even though they already have 2 children. Although, to be fair, they've been waiting for the little one in her stomach for over a year now. I know, but I'd feel better if you didn't strain yourself. For that matter, Chopper, do you mind staying here with her and the children? If anyone comes and tries to hurt them, I'm counting on you and Makino to protect Saul and Robin and each other, Luffy said, making the little reindeer do his embarrassed but happy dance as he latched onto Robin's leg, beaming happily up at the archaeologist that treated him as if he were her son as well. Okay, Daddy. I wanted to try mixing some new paint anyways, Makino said, dropping from his shoulders and standing by her mother's right side since Chopper was on her left. Just don't blow up the island, Luffy said, kissing Makino's forehead and ruffling Chopper's hat just a bit as if it were his hair. No promises, Makino chirped happily, making Robin give Luffy an exasperated but fond look. She gets that from you, Robin said, making Luffy look at her incredulously. Really? You of all people really want to go there? Luffy asked, making the others look between the two of them confused while Robin looked a bit embarrassed and focused on her sleeping son. Go beat up Bellamy and hurry back. Olivia gets restless when you're gone for too long, Robin said, making Luffy look at her sharply in surprise. Olivia is? Luffy was wide-eyed as he stared down at Robin's stomach, making her giggle. They had been at sea for about 2 months after she had told him about the pregnancy, avoiding the foxy pirates completely, which took about a week or so to go around them and several stops to restock supplies. Not to mention all the random little islands in between there and Jaya. Luffy and Makino wanted to explore all of them. and Robin was more than happy to carry Sol around and show him the beauties of nature as Zoro shadowed them just to keep an eye out. She's already moving around, but I'm not sure if you can feel her yet. She should start kicking soon now apparently, Robin said, cradling Sol in a pair of bloomed arms as her hands shot down to her stomach. But she shouldn't be kicking until the 5th month. And you're only 3 months pregnant at most, Chopper said, looking worried and making Robin smile at him. My powers allow me to grow or bloom things naturally. I can speed up the growth of some things. I only noticed yesterday that I've been subconsciously speeding up the baby's growth. I'm going to slow it down a bit to make sure she's healthy and on time instead of early, Robin said while Luffy knelt down in front of her again and placed his ear against her small baby bump. If her math was right, then she'd go into labor soon after the Marineford War as long as she didn't pause or speed up the baby's growth. She's got a heck of a kick. She's not hurting you, is she? Luffy asked, looking up at Robin worriedly and making her smile at him. Not at all. Feels like butterflies really ... but she definitely has your strength. Makino. Chopper, do you want to feel your little sister kick? Robin asked, looking at the two who beamed at her, although Chopper did do his embarrassed happy dance. Hey, can I feel? Nami asked, making Robin smile and nod. Sure, all of you can feel her kicking if you want, Robin said, smiling at her crew. Her nakama. They are the children's auntie and uncles after all. Okay, you guys can feel the baby kick, but then go get that Southbird. I'm going to beat up Bellamy and get Old Man Cricket's gold back, Luffy said, kissing Robin's stomach again before standing and kissing Robin's cheek as the others scrambled to feel for the baby. They wanted to be done before Luffy got back, and none of them felt right leaving Robin alone with just Chopper and Makino to help protect her and Sol. While Luffy didn't mind going along with most everything they wanted to do most of the time, when he gave an order he expected it to be followed to the letter. Like when he had ordered them to avoid the island Foxy and his crew were on. Or when he ordered Zoro to shadow and protect Robin and Sol whenever the archaeologist wanted to explore somewhere while Luffy was with Makino. He is their captain and they damn well knew when to fall in line. Straw Hat Luffy, your head is mine. Zehahaha. Blackbeard was laughing as his crew and raft went towards Luffy. And that was when the Straw Hats were treated to a very rare and scary sight. They saw Robin completely lose her shit. Saint Perd Mare, Sanji shouted wide-eyed as a large completely black hand grew out of the raft, breaking it up and moving to completely squash Blackbeard and his crew. What? Usopp shouted wide-eyed and pale. Holy fucking shit, Nami shouted horrified and probably not even hearing what exactly Sanji had said. What she said, Sanji said, trembling as a second hand grew out of the piece of raft Teach was on. Damn, Zoro said wide-eyed while Chopper was hiding behind Robin with Makino. Wow, I think why Luffy cut himself off as he suddenly stepped in front of Robin, just in time for a bullet to slam into his face and bounce back at Blackbeard's sniper with twice the speed. Luffy. Robin was immediately distracted by her husband being shot despite knowing that he was bulletproof, causing the hands to break apart into flower petals just as the knock-up stream activated. It's fine. I'm rubber, remember, Luffy said, quickly soothing his wife as Nami ordered the others to unfurl the sails. I'm sorry. When I saw him, Robin trailed off, ashamed at her lack of control over her own emotions. She was prepared to fully blame it on her pregnancy, but in truth she knew she hadn't gotten over her husband's death. And she probably never would. It's fine. I understand. If anything happened to you, I'd do a whole lot worse. Especially now, Luffy said, pressing a kiss to Robin's head as he pulled her close. Their son being held safely in their arms since the stream was powerful enough to steal him right from the cradle, and like hell were they going to let that happen? Overprotective goofball, Robin said, smiling weakly at her husband who just grinned back at her. Do you really want to go there? Luffy asked, earning a snort from Robin who tightened her grip on her squirming and giggling son. You don't want to because I'm carrying precious cargo, in more ways than one, Robin said, smirking a bit as she reclined against his chest while one of his hands clamped down on Sol to keep him pressed close to Robin, his other hand dropping to cradle the swell of her stomach. Yeah, you are, Luffy admitted softly as he kissed her cheek and held her closer just as they burst from the stream and into the clouds. Wow, it's like a sea of white, Usopp said, making Robin and Luffy look up from each other finally. Yeah, but if you go swimming in it, you'll probably end up crashing back into the sea below. These are still clouds after all, Luffy pointed out, making Usopp pale and hastily scramble away from the railing where he was about to leap over. Falling from that distance would cause you to go splat with great force, perhaps even sending some of your entrails back to J, Robin said with a chuckle, causing more than a few of the others to pale starkly at that. Mama, Makino whined at her mother's gory comment and morbid humor. Well, at least Makino doesn't have your sense of humor, Luffy said, a bit relieved at that even as his sweat dropped at her comment. Ah, but Sol likes my humor, Robin said, smiling down at her giggling son. He's going to end up telling dark jokes as soon as he can talk, won't he? Luffy asked, completely deadpan as he stared at his wife who giggled a bit. Well, he does seem to take more after me than you, Robin said before a giant puffer fish of some sort appeared at the front of the ship, Sanji and Zoro being down by the decreased amount of air due to high altitude they were. So does Makino, just not your sense of humor. Maybe little Olivia will be more like her daddy than her mommy, Luffy said, backhanding the fish away with the utmost casual movement, not even looking at the fish. I'm sorry I couldn't get rid of him. If I did then the war wouldn't. Robin immediately looked away while Luffy kissed her cheek. It's all right. We'll be ready this time. But you will be staying on Amazon Lily where the both of you and Saul and Makino will be safe, Luffy said, making Robin sigh heavily but nod in agreement as she felt another kick from Olivia while Saul seemed to sense the somber mood and whines at his parents. Amazing to see Blue Sea dwellers here. It has been a long time since Norland has left. Tell me, how is he doing? The man in armor who arrived to help them asked, drawing Luffy and Robin's attention to him. He's dead. He died years ago, Luffy said bluntly, even as he adopted a serious look on his face. He'd have to beat the crap out of Enel again soon, before he hurt anyone. I'm not scared of some stupid false god. Earlobe guy can come down here and fight me if he thinks he's so powerful, Luffy said, hoping that the guy heard him and showed up, just so that he could go ahead and kick his ass. Only if I don't kill him first, dear, Robin said, but she stepped away as the armored man flew away quickly. Luckily they had landed first and were now getting off of Mary before Enel decided to show up. Well, a little non-believing blue dweller. Time to show you the strength of a god. Enel began arrogantly and making Luffy look bored when Enel tried to zap him, but it didn't work. Hey, what do you call the man who defeats a god? Luffy asked, thinking curiously about that for a moment as Enel pulled a shocked face that had his crew snickering. No such man exists, Enel exclaimed, trying to zap Luffy again, only for it to fail. A devil, Robin said with a smirk from nearby, making Luffy snort as the scared Skypedians stared shocked at their god being unable to kill one man. That makes you the devil's wife, not his child, Luffy said with a grin towards Robin, before he simply decked Enel across the jaw. I think I hit him too hard, Luffy said casually as he looked at Enel's body board. No such thing. There's only he's still moving, and hit him again, Robin quipped in an instant as Saul gurgled happily at the violence. Skypedia has a new god, the present White Beret leader was quick to exclaim, bowing before Luffy, who laughed. Me a god? You've been smoking funny plants, Luffy said with a grin as he walked back over to Robin, his crew, and his children. Luffy just called one thing over his shoulder before Makino jumped forward to hug him, making him catch her easily and swing her around a bit. I'm no god. I'm a pirate, the future pirate king. Despite him saying that he wasn't a god, much less their god, the Skypedians worshipped Luffy while he and his crew were at the Sky Islands. He was treated and called a god. Robin was called a goddess. Their children were called the prince and princess, and the rest of the crew were deigned their disciples and vassals. Zoro seemed kind of pleased to be seen as the god's right-hand man and the loyal knight of the prince and princess. Nami was less than pleased to be considered a concubine, however. Luffy had quickly corrected them, saying that Nami controlled the weather and was not his concubine. He only had eyes for Robin. She was then classified as a demigod of weather, much to her pleasure. The group spent the next few days on the Sky Island just enjoying the sights and feeling free to tour the island to their content without having to worry about the trials or Nami being kidnapped by Enel. Robin calmly and precisely decoded the poneglyph, and Luffy showed everyone where the golden bell was when he remembered his promise to the old man with the cool monkey men. The grin on his face when he hit the bell with his fist was so wide it would have broken his face if he wasn't made of rubber. The sound of it ringing was heard all across the Sky Islands and even down to the blue ocean below, where most of Mock Town and Jaya itself stared up at the sky in disbelief over the fact that it hadn't been just a myth or a lie. Mont Blanc was grinning widely at his ancestor being proven right and that he wasn't a liar. The story hadn't been a lie. Luffy was sure his yell of "suck it, Bellamy" was heard as well, and possibly the smack of Robin's hand hitting his head for saying that kind of thing around their children as well. She had a hard hit when she wanted to, and since she knew hacky ... that made her hits all the harder and more effective. Now they were going to take a few days to rest and repair the ship a bit before they left for Water 7 to get Frankie and the Sunny. Now, since Robin was pregnant and they had 2 children to look after, he hoped that the entire Anais Lobby affair could be avoided. After all, Robin didn't want to die. No, she wanted to live more than anything else right now. She wanted to live with him and their crew, and especially their children. They had no clue about the surprise that would await them once they made it to Anais Lobby. At first, things looked like they were going to be completely different during the Water 7 fiasco, which led to the Anais Lobby event ... But then, somehow one of those CP9 bastards got past Zoro and Sanji and stole Minako and Saul right from the ship, while Robin went with Chopper to keep them away from the CP bastards. Naturally, that had severely pissed off all of the Straw Hats, especially the 2 parents. Robin had left them on the ship because she didn't want the CP9 assholes getting near her children. When they stormed Anais Lobby, a lot of things were playing out the same as they had in the original time stream, when Robin was the one who had gone with them to keep her crew from being targeted. The only differences was that Robin wasn't yelling about how she wanted to die. Makino was unconscious at the time, and Saul was being tended to by the bubble lady Khalifa or something like that. Give yourself up, Nico Robin, if you ever want to see your children again. There's no way you can survive against the world. Spandam yelled arrogantly down at Robin, who scowled darkly. Do you think I'm an idiot? Whether I gave myself up or not, you'd still attack my children simply because of my blood running in their veins. Robin had shouted back, and that was when the rest of the crew had arrived. Usopp shooting down the flag on orders from his captain, much to everyone's shock. And her name is Monkey Robin. I don't care how many of you bastards there are. No one touches my family. Luffy near roared at them, and that's when the fighting began. Keep the bubble woman alive. She's been taking care of Saul and he's not hurt. The least we can do is spare her life. Luffy ordered his crew, who all nodded in agreement. And the others? Sanji asked, lighting a cigarette. No mercy, Luffy said coldly, and with that they were all off like a rocket. Robin managing to use her bloom fruit to get Saul away from Khalifa and then running straight for Spandam to recover her daughter. Lucci tried to get in her way but was distracted by Luffy. From there some things proceeded exactly as they had in the original time stream, right up until Luffy was preparing his finishing move against Lucci. That's when Makino woke up, firmly in her mother's custody. Wah! Makino blinked awake slowly as she looked around before her eyes landed on Lucci, and they widened in shock. Brown? Makino asked, and immediately her parents both froze, Luffy's fist diverting into the wall beside Spandam at the last second. Brown, what are you doing? Makino asked in disbelief as she stared at her brother, while Robin was frozen wide-eyed as she stared at Lucci. Go to sleep, little sister. When you wake up again, I'll have you somewhere safe, Lucci promised her softly, even if his eyes were glued onto Luffy, who was staring at him in wide-eyed shock and horror. Why are you fighting Daddy? Makino asked, shocked and horrified and confused. Lucci froze for a moment at that as he stared at Luffy and then glanced over at Makino and Robin, who were staring at him in wide-eyed shock. He's the one who abandoned us to the facility then, Lucci said, and he looked furious. He didn't say a word about the ages not matching up. He knew he had been aged up artificially using some pirate that the scientists had caught. No, Mama and Daddy didn't even know about us. Not until they raided a facility and found Saul, Makino said, pointing at her baby brother. He still wasn't there. Why wasn't he there to save us then? Me, Blue, Braid, you. Why wasn't he there? Lucci demanded, and there were angry tears building up in his eyes as he got in front of Luffy and began to hit the pirate as hard as he could in the chest and stomach and everywhere he could. We didn't know. I didn't know ... not until less than 6 months ago. I didn't know that Makino was mine either ... not until I read the reports myself ... and all of them ... they said you were dead long before I rescued Makino. Robin said, her voice trailing as she descended into sobbing. Her son, the son she had never got to meet and had thought was dead ... he was still alive. Her son of the triplets was still alive ... Did that mean that ... that the other two of the triplets was still alive? Her daughters ... were they still alive? Why? I spent so long waiting for you to come. Why? Each of his questions was punctured by another punch to Luffy, who wasn't bothered at all by the fists that were hitting him and getting weaker and weaker. After all, Lucci was already exhausted from the battle that happened before Makino woke up. I spent so long hating you ... Why? Lucci's words were getting softer, and he felt tears start slipping down his cheeks as he kept punching the unmoving Luffy, who just stared at him in sadness and grief. Why? Lucci's words finally trailed off completely as he began to sob, his fists weakly beating against Luffy's chest now. After all, just because he had been aged up to his late 20s and early 30s ... his mind had been sharpened and forced to age fast as well ... he was trained into the perfect assassin who could control his emotions out necessity ... but ... despite all of that, he was still emotionally a little boy, no older than 5. A scared and alone little boy who had been forced to be something he wasn't, something he never wanted to be. A little boy who wanted nothing more than his parents to be safe and loved like the other children he had seen in the streets were. All he wanted was his mom and dad. With that ... he couldn't continue to fight. He was exhausted in more ways than one, and he just wanted his mom and dad ... He wanted to be safe and loved. He was just a kid and he only wanted his parents. I'm sorry, Lucci. I'm so sorry I wasn't there for you, that I wasn't able to help or save you, Luffy said, tears cascading down his cheeks as his son broke down sobbing in front of him. Luffy dropped to his knees and immediately hugged his son, who was back to his standard human form. I'm sorry, son. I'm so sorry. Luffy held his son close as he apologized, Robin rushing over as well with Saul in one arm and Makino hugging her leg. We're sorry, Robin corrected as she dropped to her knees as well and reached out to hug her grown son. Her poor little boy who she thought she had lost. Her little boy who had been forced to grow up far too fast, mentally and physically. We're sorry. We should have been able to protect and save you and your sisters. We're so sorry, baby boy, we're here now," Robin said softly as she pulled Lucci close to her as he sobbed and sniffled like the child he truly was, despite his outward appearance and the experiences he was forced to endure. "It's okay, baby. No matter what, we're here now. Mom and Dad are here now, sweetheart. We're here." Usopp stared at Lucci, who was standing on the ship and sticking close to Robin and Luffy, looking unsure of himself almost as he stared back at them. "The labs. You know the 3 children that the labs said that they killed? The ones Makino said she had seen die. This is our son," Robin said softly as she looked up at Lucci and gave him a gentle but watery smile. She hadn't been there. She hadn't been able to save him, and so he had hunted her god if she had known. "Bonnie's power?" Zoro asked, making Luffy and Robin nod their heads. He's only 5. Robin said, and there were tears in her eyes again as she stared up at her son, who looked unsure of himself. "We gonna meet up with Bonnie so she can turn him back to normal then?" Usopp asked, shrugging. This wasn't the weirdest thing he's ever heard of happening or that he's seen ever since he joined up with Luffy. "Only if he wants to. We want to give him the childhood he deserves to have, but not if he doesn't want to," Luffy said, leaving the decision up to his son. "I want to stay as an adult for a little while longer. I can help protect Kas and my siblings better like this," Lucci said softly as he glanced at his obviously pregnant mother, who gave him a loving and gentle smile in return. "That's sweet of you, dear, but you don't have to worry about protecting me. Your mom has quite a few tricks up her sleeves," Robin said as a simple wave of her hand caused dozens of hands to appear on the Marines nearby and spanned them. A simple twitch of her fingers snapped all of them into at least 2 pieces. "And so do I," Luffy said with a grin as he used his elephant gun to knock a few of the Marine battleships out of commission and their way. "You were holding back when we fought before they knew the truth," is what remained unsaid. Before they knew that Lucci was really Brown, as the lab had named him. "Of course, I didn't know you were my son then, but I still didn't want to kill you by accident. Especially not where Makino could see," Luffy said, smiling at Lucci reassuringly. "If he's alive though, then what about the other 2? Blue and Braid?" Nami asked, looking at the parents, who froze for a moment as they stared at each other and then looked at Lucci. "Do you know?" Robin trailed off as she stared at Lucci, who gave her a small shrug. Blue eyes had blondish pink hair. "The lab said it was cause of grandma, but not which grandma, she's a Marine," Lucci said, and Luffy and Robin both immediately began trying to think of any blonde pink-haired Marine that they had met. "Sounds like the cage lady from Alabasta," Usopp said, having gotten a better look at her than anyone else and making Luffy and Robin whip around to look at him and then at each other. "Captain Hina of the Black Cage Corps," Robin said softly as she looked at her husband, who stared at her wide-eyed. "You think she might be Blue Eyes? I can actually see that. She does look a lot like you, and Gramps once mentioned that my grandma was blonde in her youth," Luffy said softly as he stared back at his wife. "Braid, I'm not completely sure. Last I heard of her, she had managed to escape the facility and got free somewhere in the New World. Her last reported sighting was near one of Whitebeard's territories. Her hair was the most different of all 3 of us because of some experiments that the scientists did. She has an affinity for ice, and they were trying to tap into that and force it to the surface," Lucci said, and his mother pulled him into a side hug as the crew escaped Denai's lobby back towards Water 7. "Don't worry, sweetheart. We'll find your sisters and bring them back home, and then we can be a family again if you all let us," Robin said, smiling at Lucci, who looked unsure of what to do. His hands hovered in the air a bit as if he wanted to hug her, but he seemed hesitant to do so. Finally, he just gently placed his arms around her and gave his father a completely lost look that begged for help. Robin, he might not be okay with much physical contact yet, Luffy gently told his wife, who immediately released Lucci, who looked a bit relieved that he was now set free. "I'm sorry, Lucci, I didn't mean to make you feel uncomfortable," Robin apologized to her son, who just gave a small shrug. "It's fine. It was nice, I'm just not used to it," Lucci said, looking away and looking kind of embarrassed, making Robin and Luffy give sad smiles while the crew winced. "Well, if you ever want another hug, just let me know. For now, let me introduce you to the rest of the crew," Robin said, smiling softly but sadly at her son and then turning towards the crew. "Usopp-san is our sniper. He's a bit of a coward and has a habit of telling lies, but his heart's in the right place. Zoro-san is the first mate and swordsman. He's protective as crazy and seems all tough and uncaring, but he's actually a really big softie. Sanji-san is our cook. He flirts with women a lot and refuses to ever hit a woman, but he's an amazing cook and his heart is always being put into every dish. Nami-san is our navigator. She's a regular weather witch in the making and is also a bit of a greedy coward, but she's very smart and wants to draw a map of the entire world. Frankie-san isn't part of the crew yet, but I'm sure Luffy is already planning to recruit him. Finally, last but never least, is Chopper. He's our cute little reindeer doctor and he can be very protective of the crew and take on different forms for fighting. He's not afraid to tie you down to a bed to wrap up your injuries," Robin said, pointing to each crew member in turn as she introduced them to her son, who nodded to them all politely. "Hey, I don't mean to bring up bad memories and all, but how did Makino see them die when they obviously didn't?" Usopp asked, looking awkward as he spoke. Somebody apparently ate a type of hypnotism fruit or a fruit that makes people see something different, and the scientists planted the image of us dying in Makino's head to try and bring out her talents via trauma, Lucci said while Makino whimpered a bit and clung tightly to her big brother's leg. Captain's orders, guys, if you ever come across one of these labs, free any prisoners within and burn it to the ground if you can. If you can't, then tell me where it is so I can do it, Luffy said, giving his crew a serious look and making them all nod grimly. After learning about what those bastards did to innocent children, even Chopper and Usopp would be more than happy to burn the building down with the scientists inside. Aye, Captain. Okay, sadly the chapter is over. And if you enjoyed the video, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.